What's up, guys? Adam Green here with No More News. Thank you all for joining me today, Monday, July 7th, 2025, 7/7/25. Got a huge show for you guys today. And a first-time guest, the Epstein cover-up. A new Epstein cover-up just dropped, and joining me today on the show is the host of the YouTube channel Think for Yourself. He is, I believe, a Jesus mythicist. He understands the Christian question. He's a critic of the Abrahamic religions. He is the one you guys remember. He's been in the chat a little bit. I think he watches the show. And he was the one that asked Dr. Richard Carrier about me and posted that video. So what's up? Think for yourself. Thanks for being here, buddy.
What's up, Adam? Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yep. So we're going to talk a little bit about the latest Epstein cover-up, recap some of that, because it's just so funny, so transparent, the cover-up that's happening here. And then we'll get into some of the Christian question stuff. And we'll probably do another show in the future getting exclusively about religion. But you're here today
I'm very happy
for the No More News ride, so good to have you here.
Right, yeah, I'm very happy. It's exciting to go over modern stuff because I try to focus on the religious part, which gets a bit boring. So we'll deep dive into the Judaism and Christian connection a bit more.
I wouldn't say it gets boring. I think it's the best stuff. I've been watching some of your material. Tell us a little bit about your channel before we get into Epstein.
Well, I am a former Catholic who at a very young age became an atheist. And for a very long time, it was just about atheism, and I was very focused on disproving Christianity. I had a few sparks later on that made me focus on the connection between Judaism. And as soon as that became my interest, it became a totally different animal. And it's odd how prior to that, you don't make that connection. It's the most obvious connection. You literally have their books in the Holy Bible. And then one day it's like, oh my, they created this religion. It just really changes. And I used to be a fan of people like Sam Harris and Bill Maher, I'm sorry to say.
Me too. Me too.
And
when
I found out
Christianity, it was the Four Horsemen and Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins and those guys. Atheist experience even that was part of my like deconversion, although I never really believed. And I never didn't even understand until after that, like the connections to Judaism and like modern Judaism and Israel and Christian Zionism and power. I didn't understand any of that when I was a kid growing up in church. What did make you leave Catholicism, though? Like, did you sincerely believe and then you stopped believing? To explain that.
I was at a museum. I'm from New York, and I was at one of our amazing museums. I saw Neanderthal skeletons and all these things about evolution and dinosaurs. I was able to touch this. They had all the answers. I go to my Catholic school and I ask my science teacher about the dissonance between this Adam and Eve story and the dinosaurs and the caveman. And she basically got angry at me. And I would start getting in trouble the more questions I asked. And I had no information. There was no ChatGPT and internet. And it was very hard for me to gather the information. So it's, and then later on, I studied philosophy.
Is a big one for me too. Because obviously Genesis and Adam and Eve, I never really believed that that's actually how it happened. So then you're in school, you're learning evolution, you're going to the Natural History Museum. At this time, YouTube was around for me. I'm a little bit younger than you, I believe, probably. So YouTube
38.
was around. Excuse me?
I'm 38.
Okay, I'm actually older than you then. Never mind.
I do have a lot of grace.
Maybe you just left it earlier than me, because when I was doing it, YouTube was around.
Right. Yeah, I was really young, and it was this thing. I had no access to atheism, but I just knew, okay, they don't have the answers. The science people have answers. And so, and then later on, I studied philosophy in university, and then later on, I actually, through sort of coincidences, I kept running into the community of Judaism. And then also I ended up, to be vague about it, I ended up having some personal investigations and being behind the scenes with the top of the financial side of this community that are actually really not religious at this point. Their ancestors were religious, but it's sort of the tradition of, in the old European days, they had the crown rabbis, the consultants that would consult the kings and the Habsburgs, these inbred kings, and they would influence them, and yet they weren't seen as genuine rabbis. That's what you see at the top of the financial side of this community. But when I watch your show, it's like, you're absolutely right, and it's so relevant in terms of demonstrating how absurd Christianity is. Although the top richest Jewish people are often not genuinely religious, that doesn't mean that this all isn't super important, because at the end of the day, just like George Bush isn't a sincere Christian, Donald Trump isn't a sincere, rich people don't need religion. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
they
So
use
like,
it to control people.
it's
And
Machiavellian.
it influences them too, just like with the rabbis in the community, and even anybody that identifies as Jewish, like that Jewish identity is rooted in Judaism and the Torah to a degree.
Yeah. And yeah, so that side of it, although they're not genuinely religious, you are the closest person I found to what I saw with my own eyes, with my deep diving into the investigating personally, using certain skills I have to get into that community. And I found out all sorts of information. That it sucks to have the burden of knowing things that I can't go into extreme detail, but I'll just say that when I saw your show a while ago, it was a huge relief to me, because at that time I was amongst these people and I couldn't do my show. I have some interview clips with Richard Carrier that I had recorded like 3.5 years ago, that because I was in this community, I couldn't start my channel. And I started seeing you and I'm like, oh, I'm so relieved that there's a guy that, and he has a small community of people that are not only irreligious, but they're acknowledging the Jewish connection to this. Whereas we have so many, atheism is completely conquered by Zionism. And I used to be part of that. I used to listen to Sam Harris every day. And then this genocide, very recently, he started showing his true colors by demonstrating that I thought he was so brave, saying, oh, the Islamic people are dangerous. I'm like, yeah, man, awesome. And I just thought, oh, he must also be consistent with all Abrahamic religion. But nope, when these Israeli leaders are literally quoting the Torah, quoting the Talmud, he has nothing except defense. He's active. He brushes his teeth in the morning and justifies genocide with his eloquent vocabulary, and then goes to bed at night. It's amazing how someone could be such a stark contradiction.
He does defend it, but I did find a quote from one of his blogs. And you're right about the atheist community, how they're all willing to criticize like Christianity and Islam, but only for in certain ways. And they don't link it back to Judaism. They're very sensitive around the topic of Judaism. They're always like policing any criticism of Judaism or like what rabbis believe today. They call anti-Semitic. And
Yeah, I quickly found out that despite it seeming like we should be able to criticize Judaism, when you do, if you do, you do get punished. I mean, recently I got banned on Reddit for the 50th time.
mhm,
Everyone's allowed to criticize all the other religions. You can even criticize Christianity by quoting the Old Testament.
mhm.
But if you quote the same quote to attack Judaism, you're somehow being anti-Semitic because it's so connected to the ethnic demographic. But why is it so connected to an ethnic demographic? Because the religion is literally racist.
And
So that's not my
ethno-religion, right?
responsibility. Yeah, are we being anti-German if we mention something about the World War II days, or anti-Russian if we mention something about the Soviet era? No.
Mhm. So all of these most famous atheists, I went and found some of their quotes from videos or their blogs. Like Christopher Hitchens says, the Torah is a document of very aggressive and cruel tribe and religion. You're saddled with this savage Judaism. He was speaking to a Christian. It's actually evil. It's wicked. It's really awful. And they give it to children. It's disgraceful. The ADL called when Elon was first buying Twitter. They called for me by name to be banned because I said Judaism was savage. And they were quoting this meme.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Richard Dawkins. He had his book, The God Delusion. they called him anti-Semitic because he said the God of the Old Testament and didn't like blame Christians for, Yahweh. He says, is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction, jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capricious, malevolent bully. They called him anti-Semitic. And here's the Sam Harris one, where he in a blog, I think it was a blog about Zionism and how he still supports it, and he just like detaches the religious aspect. But he did admit parts of the Hebrew Bible, books like Leviticus, Exodus, Deuteronomy, are the most repellent, the most sickeningly unethical documents to be found in any religion. They're worse than the Quran. They're worse than any part of the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
So at least
Yeah,
once he did criticize it.
And I have seen him, he's sort of oddly enough, sort of middle ground. He'll condemn the settlers in the West Bank. He will condemn certain things so that he establishes himself as the reasonable person. And with big words, he tries to distinguish himself from the extreme radical Zionism. But at the end of the day, what his form and Bill Maher's form of atheism is basically this secular Zionism that strips away anything that would be good about religion, like not drinking too much, not being promiscuous, all of those sort of diligent things. Let's get rid of all of that. And let's just have this idea that we're the chosen people, and let's believe, and this is the central thing, let's believe in the historical claims. And I've seen Bill Maher straight up say, new rule, that Israel belongs to the Jews. Don't believe me? Read the Bible. He actually quotes the Bible when it comes to the historical claim. Everything else he'll make, that's all. Anything where I got to have rules in my life and I can't eat a ham sandwich with cheese, let's get rid of that. Let's just have the part that supports this evil regime.
And they do like to minimize like the extent of the supremacist rabbis and the extent of the overall objective of Judaism, which is like world government and a world religion and their Messiah ruling the world. They downplay that. And I think they're able to actually do that and get away with it because of Christianity and Islam exist. Like they're the big kids on the block. They've got billions. There's only like, a few million Jews. So they get to point to them. They're the extremists. They're the villains. They're the ones always unfairly persecuting the Jews. And it almost runs cover for what is ultimately like the Judeo agenda of a Messiah, prophecies ruling the world. That's how I see it play out.
Yeah. And although I absolutely feel so bad for the Palestinians and I'm just heartbroken about what I see with the children and whatnot, I've stopped openly being pro-Palestinian, even though that seems like the safer route, because what happens is these types we're talking about, they'll use the false dichotomy of, oh, well, what about what Hamas did? Well, what about when this part in the Quran? And as soon as you start specifically supporting them, they lock you down with that false binary argument. And so I've started just being anti-Zionism. Because once you have the kippah, the Palestinian flag, they love that because they have the tools for that. They love just attacking. I'm sure you've had this too. When you say anything about the Talmud or anything to these rabbis on Twitter, they always just they assume that you're a Christian and they can skip anything.
They try to dismiss you by claiming like using anti-Christian talking points too.
Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's crazy too.
They're not able to discredit you. And that's the thing is, this is why what we're doing has more credibility, because we're not hypocrite Christians that are like blaming, Jews for rejecting Jesus, or we're not Muslims arguing with Jews over who has the birthright. We actually have the moral high ground to stand on. We have the credibility, the objectability that we're criticizing all of them. Zionism really is just Judaism, and Christianity and Islam are also just forms of Judaism. So
right,
we're anti all of these prophecy, Judeo, mythical, ancient fairy tales. That's my position.
Yeah, and whether or not people like Fuentes and these other sort of anti-Zionist Christians are actually controlled opposition or not, I don't know. But I do know that they function as controlled opposition because people like Fuentes, they're giving you an answer that accomplishes nothing. They're just saying, Yes, let's get angry. This is why you should be angry. They're doing this, they're doing that, this part in the Talmud, this part in Israel. But the answer is come to the Catholic Church, which also has a huge history of crazy conspiracies and pedophilia, and they worship the Torah. It's like, how is this our option? You are literally another form of Judaism.
Yeah.
And
Either
all
way,
of
you
this.
get Messianic Judaism.
And one thing I actually wanted to show you is, and I'm sure you already know this, but like when people quote anti-Semitic quotes from Christian leaders from the past, or even the anti-Semitism from the Bible, what you see is when rabbis talk about other denominations, there's about 20 denominations in history of Judaism. Currently, I don't know how many there are. They say the same sort of shit. So let me give you a few quotes. So Rabbi Sofer: the new Reform Torah is not Torah at all. They have uprooted the foundations of faith. Their synagogues are synagogues of destruction. So if a Christian was saying that about Judaism, it would sound like, oh, typical sort of shit like Justin the Martyr sort of thing. You see, this is a Reformed guy talking about conservative Judaism. Conservative Judaism is a greater threat to our people than Christianity, because it disguises heresy in the language of tradition. That's my Reformed accent. The other one was the conservative. The very distinct difference. And so this is just, it's infighting. When Christians are saying something, oh, they're the synagogue of Satan, that's what they say about each other. They accuse each other of this sort of thing. Has there been persecution? Have they made the Jews wear stars, and they made rules that you can't intermingle with the Christians? Yeah. But at the end of the day, despite this history of conflict between the Catholic Church and the other Christian churches and Judaism, they agree on one thing. And that central thing, that Torah, is the thing that controls all of them. That's what they all have in common. They have different interpretations, but the Torah is at the head of it. And if you believe in the Torah, you're part of that community.
Yep. Absolutely. You're within Judaism. You're not a real opposition if you believe the Torah and the prophecies and worship the God of Israel. Christians and Muslims aren't opposed to Judaism. They're just fighting within Judaism for their own specific flavor of Judaism. And that's the Judeo paradigm.
Yeah,
so,
they're all trying to out-Jew each other, including the Catholics. Somehow they're also engaged in that contest. You talk to a Hasidim about the Reform, they try to out-Jew them. You talk to a Sephardic about the Ashkenazis, oh, they're corrupt. And you talk about, they're always fighting against each other and condemning each other. And that's what Christians and Muslims do.
Right. I like the meme you made here. I'm against Judaism. Me too, but the Torah is so creepy and historically inaccurate, right? You don't worship the Torah, right? They act like they're opposing Judaism while they're affirming and validating the Torah, which is the root of Judaism. And this is why they'll always focus on the Talmud as bad, but the Torah as good. And they'll lie and say the Jews don't really believe the God of the Torah. They secretly worship Satan, which is another baseless lie as well. And it's all just circling the wagons, running cover for the actual problem. It is full spectrum dominance, controlling the opposition. And it makes me wonder, like, when I think Christianity started just like with a sectarian, a different sect that came up with this mystical Messiah. But it almost makes you wonder, like, were they intentionally trying to set up a controlled dialectic, knowing that they could control their opposition if they created this folk hero that was superficially anti-Jewish and anti-Judaism with Jesus?
Yeah, it seems like this 40 chess thing, but you got to remember that the anti-Semitism was already there. They already had that. So it seems like this, like such
You
a
mean from the
complicated,
Romans?
like no, like
Gentiles?
from when you think about like, oh, were they putting this so-called anti-Semitism in their New Testament strategically as sort of 5D chess? At the end of the day, it's not that 5D chess. It's not that complicated of a move when that already existed. So it's like a way of sort of rallying the emotion that already existed. And we see this today. We see controlled opposition people rally up. Some of these guys that are now in the FBI, what are the Indian guy and the other guy? They used to be on podcasts complaining about Epstein. And now they're saying, oh, Epstein killed himself and there is no list. And just a few, like last year, they're on these podcasts like, yeah, we got to investigate that. And so I don't know precisely what their intentions were, but my best guess, and I'd like to see what you actually think when the direct control ended. But clearly, the originators were actually Jewish. There were sects of Jewish Christians. It seems like it began with both. There was the Noahide version. They had established Noahide rules within their Christian Judaism. And then it seems to me that the Jewish Christians were sort of either wanted to become, I mean, why would you want to stay in that category? It's almost like it was the more alluring side. And so it's almost like they either joined the Noahide version or they left. And then by the 2nd century after its origin, now it's Gentile controlled. And I do think the Gentiles did take over Christianity. But here's a great example. So I'm related, my grandpa's from Georgia. I'm related to people who fought in the losing side of the Confederate War. And when you research the Christian origin for Black people, when these slave owners were giving Christianity to their slaves, they didn't want them to maintain their voodoo animism culture. They wanted to imprint them. Anytime you colonize a people or enslave a people, you give them a little bit of your culture. When Romans came into a place, they wanted you to have a bit of their culture. They didn't want you to intermingle with them and sit next to them in the same pew, but they did want to imprint on you. And what did they do? They gave strategic bits of Christianity to these African slaves. They taught them Luke 12, where Jesus tells a parable about beating slaves and implying that there's nothing wrong with beating slaves or having slaves, which shouldn't be a surprise because it shouldn't be a surprise because he's a rabbi preaching the Torah, which also says slavery is good. But they taught that part, not the part in Exodus that might inspire a feeling of liberation. Let's skip that. And so they strategically gave them cherry-picked Christianity. And then one day, as we all know, the Black church got its own agency. And right now you can go to a Black church and see a preacher say stuff about the white man. And yeah, he's anti-white now. But who started his church? White people who enslaved his ancestors. And it seems to me, the deeper I get, that that's the best way to look at what happened to the Europeans. I don't think if you go into the back of the Vatican, there's a bunch of meddling rabbis like, what's the next thing we're going to tell the Christians? No, I don't think it's directly controlled. They don't need direct control. They don't even have direct control over each other.
There's control is the theology, which at its root already had, whether they intended it strategically or not, it already had the theological controlled dialectical like counterpart built in. And it's a meme, basically. I describe it as memes. And the meme of the Messiah is to conquer the Gentiles and have dominion over the Gentiles. And they could read from the scriptures that the Jews were to reject this Messiah. He's supposed to be condemned to a shameful death, like it says in Isaiah 53 and Wisdom of Solomon, and that they're to be blinded, and he goes to a nation that did not call on him. There's all these verses that inspired them to create this midrash of Jesus that wasn't for the Jews, but was at least not for the Jews right away. It's for the Gentiles first. So even if, like Paul in the first Christians that conceived this idea, like they weren't, even if they were genuine and sincere, like they're still a product of that meme and like working to fulfill that meme, which is about the Messiah conquering the Gentiles. I don't think any scholar can deny that's what the objective of the Messiah is, according to the scriptures.
Right. We're all subscribed. And even if you're seething in hatred, watching Nick Fuentes, giving him money and like, oh yeah, I hate them so much. Doesn't matter how anti-Semitic you are. If you believe in the Torah, you're on board and everything you're saying is infighting. We don't need that sort of hatred. That it really only accomplishes it's counterproductive. That's sort of the thing that you're seeing on this anti-Semitic Christian side. That's not going to be constructive at all against like fighting the Zionist plan.
Look at this. I don't talk about this that much, but Nietzsche talked about how Christianity is slave morality and a slave religion. Like, look at this, guys. New Testament, slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. And then you're slaves of Christ. You're slaves to your earthly rulers. Do not fight against them, because you just believe in Jesus and you'll go to heaven. In fact, being martyred by them and giving up all your wealth and losing in this world and being hated by the world, that's how you really win. It's a slave religion.
You know what I learned from you? I had no idea, even though I've personally talked to Tovia Singer, and I had an interview I have on my show. I also had some phone interviews that led to that. I had no idea that Noahide practice was still going on, like genuine, like rabbinic Jewish churches have Noahides, and it's mind-blowing that I had no idea. Now that I researched it so much, I'm starting to see it. And you said something about how Tovia Singer, his mission is to create Noahide people. And it's so funny because I consulted him. I get his number and I'm talking to him personally. I'm like, hey, I want to consult you about this. Like, please help me out. And when I asked him about the Noahide coincidence that he's like, telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, I had no idea that he literally is a part of recruiting goyim to this day. Actually, it would be funny if someone actually was willing to just become one of his Noahide students. I think that would be great. I can't get away with it. He knows who I am, but someone should just become one of these guys Noahide practitioners and see if you could get some information for us.
Yeah,
It's
hear
so
what he's
crazy
telling
that,
them behind closed doors. But it's
can you
not a
believe
secret.
that?
It's not a secret conspiracy. He's open about it. He's bragging about it all the time. The target for all the Noahides is evangelical Christians, by the way. They're the closest things to it. And his other goal is to keep Jews away from Christianity, which they see
Exactly.
as idolatry.
He told me his worst enemy is Jews for Christ. He
Yeah,
is not
Michael
into it.
Brown, Dr. Michael Brown, who I have debated with. That's like one of his biggest enemies. He's a Messianic Jew who actually just went into early retirement because he had some scandal where he's sexually harassing or had an affair with his assistant or something, his secretary.
Yeah. You know what's really funny about Jews for Christ is they are literally demonstrating our argument for
Yeah.
us, because if you look into them, they don't worship the Jewish the 613 Mosaic. They revert to the Noahide laws. They say, okay, it was fulfilled, we only have to now do these easier Noahide laws. And that demonstrates what I was saying earlier. It seems like the Christian Jews that were early Jews starting this thing, they created the Noahide Club, and they went, oh, that's a bit easier. Let's, I just got to do these 7 rules. And why would you want to have all of these hard rules? So I think that it sort of converged and then became it's seemingly anti-Semitic, but it's just Jews for Christ are Noahide Christians. They are Jews that say, okay, we only have to live as Christians now. And that's what we're saying probably seemed to have happened. So it makes it so seemingly like a plausible theory as to what occurred with this 2nd century transition from the Jewish Christianity to everyone being sort of Gentile controlled Christianity.
Yeah. I mean, they set it into motion. It had a life of its own. The meme, though, is like rooted in certain ideas. Like I was saying, even if the first Christians or Paul, if he was the very first one that innovated to take this to the Gentiles, even if he was completely sincere, he's still a product of the messianic meme conspiracy, which is an open conspiracy on the pages of the Torah, if you recognize what it is. And even Tovia Singer, I super chatted into Myth Vision once and asked Tovia Singer, because I wanted to clip it. I've seen him mention it before, that Acts 15, the Jerusalem church, James and Peter agreed that Paul is to go to the Gentiles and teach them this list of laws and believe in the God of Israel. And scholars and everybody agrees that this list is basically a Noahide law list. So Tovia agreed with that. And even top Orthodox Christians like Jay Dyer cite Acts 15 and say, yes, this is the Noahides. We're under the Noahidic covenant. And what's the big deal? It's just like the 10 Commandments. The big deal is the whole objective was the Messiah and the God of Israel is going to have all the world worship them and his chosen people. That's their goal as the light to the nations, is to conquer the world for Yahweh.
And when I asked him about it, very softly. I have a very cucky interview with him, unfortunately. I was my plan was to sort of keep it so kosher that he'd come on again, but I think it's too late now. I've posted too much craziness by now. But his response was, "Oh, well, they say that stuff in Acts, but it's not." He sort of implied like, "Oh, well, they're just saying no blood, no strangled animals." And obviously some people, their retort would be, "Oh, well, if you prohibit the consumption of blood, you are coincidentally banning the consumption of a live limb of an animal." But then, because I had long ago read the other gospels, like an edgy sort of atheist kid, there's a lot of people know the the infancy gospel of Thomas, because that's the cool one where he zaps people to death. A lot of people don't know about the other gospel of Thomas, just gospel of Thomas. In there, and this is an old gospel. Yeah, I know it's not part of the canon, but it's part of the group of gospels.
Some
He
people
says
think it
this,
might have been earlier than the New Testament, even. I've
right.
seen.
So he says this. Jesus says to his, this is Thomas 60 of the sayings. It's all sayings in this book, Gospel of Thomas. He said to his disciples, "That man is carrying the lamb around." They said to him, "So that he may kill it and eat it." Jesus said to them, "While it is alive, he will not eat it, but only when he has killed it and it has become a corpse." They said to him, "He cannot do otherwise." This is Jesus talking in the Gospel of Thomas. That is literally one of the Noahide rules. A lot of people want to make it like, oh, it's sort of coincidental. The Noahide rules are in the Bible. Yeah, they are in the Bible. That doesn't demonstrate anything against our case. And we even the other side of it, if you really want to determine whether they were giving us a Noahide version, you have to see, is there any instances, although it's all a mess, were there any instances where they're giving you the goyim leniency on the other side? And what do we see? Jesus talking all about, oh, don't respect your mother and your brother, your father and your mother. I came here to separate you and your father and mother. Well, one of the commandments that apparently the goyim don't have to worry about is honor thy mother and father. And so there's another clue. But at the end of the day, I think it's messy enough to where we don't need to necessarily just demonstrate that it's a Noahide religion. I think that's clear enough. It's more that it's a form of Judaism. And so it's almost like
Well, it's what
I
Noahide
really,
is just
yeah,
Judaism for the Gentiles. That's even how
right.
Tovia describes it. And then they go, "Oh, we're not proselytizing, but follow Judaism for the Gentiles, which is Noahides." And then Christians will fearmonger about Noahide laws, or Muslims will, and like they don't get like the actual conspiracies. You're already basically proto Noahides just because you believe in the Trinity, which isn't even biblical. That's the only hang up, and it's not even a hang up for all rabbis. And that's the only thing standing in your way. You're essentially a de facto Noahide already.
Yeah. And the other thing that's more important is outside of these Noahide laws that are all emphasized in the epistles and the New Testament, there's all these other rules for the Gentiles. And I went through, it was so arduous. I went through almost all of them. I couldn't fit them all. There's just so many rules for the Gentiles and interaction rules and times where they're allowed to do something that Goyim are not allowed to do. But I tried to get like as many that fit the sort of theme. And the so-called exceptions, when you look deeper, you find those are the things that were disputed. So for instance, there's everyone's seen Gentiles that study the Torah are to claim it as their own are liable to death. Well, then there's another part in the same Talmud in that dispute that, oh, a goy that studies the Torah is a great person. And so that wasn't clear. But then even at the same time, do Christians study the Torah as their own? No, they don't. They don't have the full accoutrements and regalia reading in ancient Hebrew. They have a translated, Septuagint, censored version of the Torah.
I don't know. I kind of disagree with that because I hear Christians all the time say that, oh, Christianity came before Judaism, and Judaism is a perversion of Christianity, and Moses and Abraham, they were all Christians. I hear that argument from Christians all the time. Just like the Muslims do the same thing. Jesus was a Muslim, Abraham was a Muslim, everybody's a Muslim. They're like retroactively trying to own it. So there
They
is a
had the
little bit of
advantage.
that. Mhm.
They do have the advantage of being retarded. It is always easier to be stupid when you're debating something, and I've learned that it's extremely difficult to get any of this information across to anyone.
I agree. We'll get to the Epstein stuff in the second half because we're already rolling with the religion stuff. But I wanted
And on
to,
the subject of like, because
yeah.
I'm not an expert in the Quran, but I did my diligence to look through the Quran to see it matches up even easier. The only thing that really came up as like I can't really find something is there's nothing that says they don't have to get circumcised in the Quran. Whereas in
Mm,
Christianity, on numerous occasions say you don't have to get circumcised. If you're the
mhm,
Goyim don't have to get circumcised. The Quran just doesn't talk about it. And then the later Islamic texts, which we don't know where that came from, they do say it's okay. But that still fits. They basically, in the Talmud, it says they don't have to get circumcised. It doesn't say they're not allowed to. And so I can't really, when I try to argue against it,
mhm.
I can't really find an argument against it. There's these little gaps. And then when you look into it, it's a disputed rule for the Gentile. It's not
Mhm.
one of the clear ones.
Well, it's conflicting. We're not talking about a real divine book from God. So there's conflicting stuff in there. Like I know there's one verse in the Old Testament that says to circumcise the slaves of the
Yeah.
Israelites or the Hebrews, but then also like the circumcision is supposed to be a sign of God's covenant with his chosen people as well. So, but
Yeah.
I can understand
And
why they created Christianity. They're like, no circumcision. You don't have to keep kosher. They don't keep the Sabbath on Saturday. They switched it to Sunday. All of these things because the Gentiles weren't supposed to do any of those things. They're not supposed to keep the Sabbath. They're supposed to serve them on the Sabbath. They're not
it
supposed to
even
keep. Mhm.
it even says in the Talmud why they don't want you to have the Sabbath, and it should be the obvious answer. They literally say a goy cannot worship the Sabbath, and we're allowed to employ a goy to do work on the Sabbath. They knew if we can't get everyone to just start, we can't get all these dudes to take off the same day. And
Yeah.
then in the Quran, as if literally the same guy wrote all this, it says the Jews have their day off on Saturday. And then come we have ours on Friday, and then the Christians have theirs on Sunday. Like it lays out the schedule. Like there's like different work unions establishing their days off. It's insane. Very practical though. You got to give it to them. And
In have you heard of this book, The Jesus the
ooh,
Jews Never Knew by Frank Zindler? It has the total Yeshu, the secret life of Jesus, and there's a verse in it where it basically says like this: the Jews, the double agent Peter is the one that moved the Sabbath to Sunday.
mm,
I don't.
it's a very smart idea. And because it's the first thing people say that I hear Christians say, oh, well, you're talking about stuff that's in these later Hebrew texts, and technically Paul was before that. No, actually, there are traces of them talking about converting Gentiles to a half watered down version of
Mhm.
Judaism. And now let me read out a real quick quote from Philo of Alexandria. If anyone doesn't know, he's an old Hellenized Jewish philosopher. Very fun stuff to read. This is around 30 CE. He wrote, there are those among the Gentiles who have recognized one God and serve him with piety, forsaking the worship of created things and embracing the laws of justice and virtue, which are pleasing to the Creator. And there's a one that's even older than that. They were already doing this. They wanted to remain exclusive, but
Mhm.
have some cuck Gentiles.
Exactly. Yeah, they write about even before Christianity, there were God-fearers, God-fearing Gentiles that were attracted to Judaism because they thought it was ancient and the antiquity of it, and it was Eastern, it was foreign, just like white people today like Hindu religions and yoga gurus and stuff like that type of idea. So that was a dilemma for the Jews because this is supposed to be their exclusive. They're the people that dwell alone and are kept separate and they have to follow the commandments. So they didn't really want all these Gentiles converting to Judaism. But they also had the dilemma that their prophecies called for all of the Gentiles to believe in their God and
Mm,
to like have submit to the Messiah. So to solve that dilemma, proto Noahide Christianity came about,
yeah.
and that was a solution to that issue.
And the most infuriating thing I've looked at every single thing in the Quran, the Christian, Judaism, all of it. The thing that really bugs me is when you see the strategic changing of like stuff like the Gentiles are prohibited from usury and lending with interest. And then we're allowed to do like what the
Yeah.
fuck? At
Well, that's the
least that
Torah.
is,
That's straight Torah to charge
I
interest to
know.
foreigners and not the Israelites or the Hebrews.
And then the Islamic people, at least they don't engage with that. The idea that Europeans for thousands of years have been taking loans with interest and they're allowed to get, that's real. Like that's not some crazy trope. They literally can get in most banks an interest-free loan. They have an advantage in the modern world financially. This affects us in the modern day. This is not just, oh, I'm resentful. And no, it's like, to this day, our boomer parents are taking out loans and engaging in usury, and these people that practice Judaism don't. And it's infuriating. And then the other thing where they're saying they're not allowed to murder, but we are allowed to murder them. Stuff like that, where they have a rule that they're allowed to do, and then Gentiles are condemned from doing that. That's something that's pretty infuriating.
Okay. I found the exact verse of the total Yeshu. Listen to this. It's even better than I remembered. Okay. This is from, it says, so after Peter died, arose a man named Elias. People believe this is secretly about Paul. Okay. And it says, this also he required. So what did Paul require of the Gentile Christians? That not on the seventh day, but the first on which the heavens and the earth were created, ye shall worship. So don't worship on the Sabbath, Saturday, but on the first day, Sunday. And he added many other bad instructions. And this is their account on how Christianity started. They're literally saying that their double agents gave them bad instructions to not follow Judaism correctly. Isn't that wild?
And
then
affects...
on the verses where it says turn the other cheek and go 1 mile, go 2 miles, it literally puts it in the context of like a Gentile and a Jew, giving the Jews everything that they want. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, and when we talk about this Noahidism and this sort of the instructions to create these sorts of religions, another thing that I run into is people straw man it. They, like I said earlier, they make it seem like we're saying that they have control, complete control over everything, and clearly that is not the case. But what we see is just like the King of England now doesn't have complete control over the Fiji Islands. There is a Union Jack on their flag. There's English being spoken on that island. They have their names on the faces on their coins. There's an imprint. And just like when you walk around rural Europe, you can see these crucifixes, a dead zombie rabbi on a stick, showing that this place was colonized long ago and that your culture was deracinated from your ancestors. Just like I said, the African slaves were given Christianity when they used to have theirs. Spanish went into South America, took their culture. They used to lie to them, oh, these pyramids aren't your ancestors. Those are our pyramids. And, the same sort of manipulation occurred. And that's where it actually gets sort of angering when I'm reminded that we were colonized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our minds were colonized with this form of messianic apocalyptic Judaism. And yeah, I don't claim that all of Christianity was meticulously planned and they had 2,000-year foresight. This is how people try to straw man me, and they're ignoring the nuance of what we're actually saying and the claims that we're actually making. But what we are saying is that it is a mind virus and they are theologically controlled. They believe in the prophecies, they believe in the plan, they believe in the script, they agree, they're worshiping the God of Israel. They want everybody to believe in the Messiah of Israel. Like that's the mind control. And it's not even a secret conspiracy. Some people get hung up on calling it conspiracy because that implies like some type of like evil plotting and secrecy. It's an open conspiracy. You can read it all straight from the Old Testament and the New, and some aspects of it are a little more hard to follow or hidden, but it is out there. There's rabbis all over the internet for a few decades, like bragging about all of this stuff and celebrating all the Christians that left paganism to worship the God of Israel, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the new thing is you see the Groypers like Nick Fuentes saying stuff like they hate Rome.
Mhm.
They hate us, and that's why they're against Christianity, is because they hate Rome. It's like, dude, I think the Rome they hate were the guys that came with pagan gods and plunged swords into their chests and sieged Jerusalem. I don't think they hate the Catholic
Mhm.
Church so
Well,
much.
they do hate for blaming them for killing God and that
They don't
persecution.
like that, but
Right.
that's
But at the
now it's
same time,
cool.
they still think that's preferable to the paganism because
Yeah.
at least they believe in their God. And we've got clip after clip of rabbis explaining this. But
And like
mhm,
I recently posted, I actually didn't realize how many, I looked up how many Jewish people do Catholics worship. And it's about like 140, 135 or something like that. And some of them are modern. One of them's a Holocaust victim. Some of them are like from recent times. They've been created into saints. And then in the Eastern Orthodox Church, it's actually even worse. I thought it was going to be worse than I thought it was going to be better on the Eastern Orthodox. No, they actually worship a longer list. So
mhm,
I used to make jokes like, "Oh, you worshiping a rabbi." There, it's worse than that. He's saying that the solution is for us to have a whole list of these people to worship.
mhm. Yeah, not to mention all the first Christians. You know, Peter was Saul the Pharisee. James the Just was an observant Jew. They're all rabbis. They'll deny Jesus is called rabbi when he's called a rabbi a dozen times in there, and they'll cope and say, "Oh, it just means teacher." Yeah, well, that's all rabbi ever meant. Actually,
Yeah.
no, they're teaching Hebrew Torah in synagogues and doing circumcision and celebrating the holidays. But no, it's not Judaism. It's a different Judaism. They're no true Scotsman fallacies. They always do. I know the Eastern Orthodox venerate the Saint Gamaliel, who was like in the Talmud is like the top Sanhedrin leader rabbi. But they'll
Yeah.
call us rabbis because we reject all of these Judeo myths. That's the big
Yeah.
cope.
So are you saying we're the real Jews?
That's what they
Fuck
try to
yeah.
say to us. Yeah.
Hell
It's
yeah.
pretty Jewish
We
to
won.
reject Jesus. That's their meme. There's nothing more Jewish than rejecting Jesus, even though all the people that first came up with Jesus were Jews. And it is the Jewish Messiah. But this is the type of shit we hear from these copers.
So that means we could take out an interest-free loan now that we're Jews. I had no idea. I got to start living it up, man. Let's get our
Yeah,
ticket
what's
to
worse than
Israel,
one
bro.
group of people that think they're chosen? Another group, like the Christians, thinking that they're the chosen people. What's worse than one rabbi wanting us all to bow down to Moshiach? The Christians saying every knee will bow and Christ is king. And then I try to explain that the rabbis and the Christians both reference the same exact verse in Isaiah 45 about every knee will bow to the Messiah. And you don't get it that you're advancing their agenda?
Yeah. And when it came to when I presented this to Adam Green, I mean, you're Adam Green. I
Yep.
presented this to Richard Carrier,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Richard Carrier. And, I was supposed to talk about you the last time I spoke to him, and I never got to it. And so I planted a seed. And then the next time I was like, it was on the list of things we're going to talk about. And he wanted some more information. I quickly looked for a clip of you talking about him because I was like, oh, he's a big fan of you. He's great. I was like trying to sort of sell you on him, and like, he's like advertising for you, man. He's like, oh, he's quoting you. He's a big supporter of Rich Carrier. And I regret. I looked on your fan page on YouTube. I found the only thing that came up on the search bar with Richard Carrier was you watching a clip of him, and then you go, "Thanks, Jews."
Mm-hmm.
It was just a really bad clip. I take responsibility. I sent that to him, and then when I asked, "Is that
Yeah,
what
and
did
then
it?"
and
He
then
was
he
like,
took away from that I'm blaming all Jews for Christianity. All Jews
"Yeah,
today, I'm not blaming any Jews today for it, and I'm not blaming all Jews of the ancient times for it either. He goes,
yeah,
he emailed, or I emailed him. He responded. He's like, it's a sect of Jews, and it's like, I know, it's
yeah,
just a sect of Jews.
yeah." And I the other thing is someone else apparently gave him a rundown on you that influenced him heavily. And at the end of the day, as we've said a million times, to so that people understand why Price has to talk shit and why Carrier seemed to have done the same thing, is they're already dealing with people sending ad hominems. People call
Mm-hmm.
Price racist. People accuse accused Carrier of all sorts of nonsense back in the day, and so I think they're really trying to, and I understand,
They're
and you're
aware
a
of the
scholar,
cancel culture mob for
yeah,
sure, and they're on the
they
chopping block already.
right, and so I understand why he sort of did that. And the other thing is he was already writing this thing about, and he released it already, about how delusional people come up with all these theories, and it's like a sort of coping mechanism. So I find the flat Earth thing, I find these theories, and that is my sort of therapy. And it's almost like he had the incentive to connect you to that. So when he was
Yeah, he tried
saying
to
stuff
compare me
about,
to a flat earther. It's like, dude, I agree with like everything in your book. I just kind of
yeah,
connect a few more dots that like you guys are scared to do.
yeah, he barely saw you. So
Mhm.
please don't. I know you don't take it personally, but just so that you know, like I saw him seeing you, and he did not get a full view. And I wish I took more time to do it. What I was trying to do is I tried to just talk about the topic that we were talking about earlier, the sort of Noahidism, and I mentioned you, but I was trying not to make it a thing. And then when the interview was over, he's like, "No, let's keep going. I want to talk about Adam Green." He wanted to actually address it, so I didn't want it to be this thing about you as a person, but I think he wanted to make a distinction between his work, and what we do. And I think we have to remember that we're allowed to get a little edgier. You're allowed to get edgier than me. I have a whole situation. And sometimes when people do, like when Price said that shit about you, it's like, you understand why he's trying to,
Mhm.
it's sort of a survival
Yeah,
mechanism.
it's so lame. Like the pitchforks are out for him and accusing him of stuff, and then he's gonna turn around and do the same to me when he like doesn't even really know what I'm saying and doesn't watch me and barely even knows who I am, but wants to throw me under the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah, not cool. And then he's doing videos with Tovia Singer going like, "I love Judaism," and yeah, great, Godspeed on converting all your Noahides. Just like what?
I had no idea that
Oh yeah, I
Tovia
got the
Singer
clip of
does
that.
that.
I got the clip of that.
Well, that's another thing I didn't have any idea. But it's so
Mhm.
weird that Tovia Singer actually, like, there's this. I've seen videos of these Noahide practitioners. Like, you can become like a leader of the Noahide people. Like,
Mhm.
how could you live with yourself? Imagine telling your someone on a first date, "Oh, me, my religion is actually Noahidism. I believe in a watered down version of Judaism. So I can eat this cheese and ham right now. I just
Mhm.
can't eat it if it's from a living animal." And so, how do you
Yeah.
live with yourself? Do you tell your dad that you're a Noahide cult
And I guess
guy?
technically you could even still call yourself a Christian and be a Noahide as long as you're Unitarian and you don't think Jesus was God.
Yeah. Yeah, these Jews for
Mhm.
Jesus are
Mhm.
actually reverting to Noahidism. I mean, it
Mhm.
sells our point so well. Like, I just learned that today, that the Jews for Jesus, I figured they were like real Jews
Mhm.
that believe in Jesus. No, it's a way for Jews to become Christians, basically. Except you're
Right.
special, you're chosen.
Because they believe in Jesus, and Jesus said you don't have to keep all of the laws, and you don't have to circumcise or keep kosher, eat kosher food, and that sort of thing. So that I could see how there'd be a subset that would be. Some of the
And it was a
Noahides
survival
like
mechanism.
want to keep the commandments also though too. So there's
Right.
there's a diversity within all of these sects. I wanted to bring this up here. This is interesting, kind of on the topic of what we're talking about. These Christians, these groypers, these Tradcat and E Crusaders are always saying, "Oh, Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire, they're so Zionist. They hate Jesus. There's nothing they hate more than Christ as King." Well, then how come Daily Wire is having on Wes Huff to say that you're fringe and it's a conspiracy theory and no scholars question that Jesus really did exist? That this is the huge third rail within biblical studies and gatekeepers like Bart Ehrman and others who are there's a whole Carrier hater mob. Part of the reason that Carrier and Price are on have such haters and are walking on thin ice is because they're actually questioning the status quo, this dogma from the high priest of biblical studies, that questioning if Jesus really was a historical figure. So let's play this real quick, and I want to get your thoughts on this
It
issue.
seems to me we know more about Christ.
Oops. Hold on. What is this going on here? Sorry, my
Shut off my light.
audio's not. It's so weird. You got like a shadow behind you. It's like a ghost shadow on the wall moving, Peter Pan style.
Literally anyone else, but we know a lot about him. As in, do any serious? It seems to me we know more about Christ as an historical person than just about anyone else of his era. I mean, not literally.
Total lie that they always repeat. Carrier's new book I'm listening to, Jesus in Outer Space, has a whole chapter going through these bullshit claims that these people make. And they end it with a really good point. Like the fact that like they have to gaslight and lie so much and can't be honest about that none of this is true and that the evidence for Jesus is actually abysmal and extremely poor. They gaslight and say, no, you can't question. It's a conspiracy. You're not a real scholar if you do it. And no scholars agree, and it's a consensus. And it's literally like total propaganda. Status quo cover up. This status quo has been maintained. It was created by Christians when they had dominance, and it's still maintained by Christians and crypto Christians like Bart Ehrman, who was a Christian to his adult life, went to Princeton Theological Seminary and Moody Bible Institute to become a Christian, trained by Christians in Christian apologetics, and then all the Christians go, oh, Bart, even the secular atheist, Bart Ehrman says, as if he's the godfather. You Google, did Jesus exist? And it's Wikipedia citing Bart Ehrman saying, all the scholars agree, and you're a kook conspiracy theorist and a flat earther and a Holocaust denier if you say he didn't exist.
Yeah, and although Richard Carrier is a machine and he's at the forefront of it right now, he actually got it from Earl Doherty. Price was already investigating it. We had Thomas Thompson. Basically, Thomas Thompson proved that everything's fake. He was the first guy that proved that Moses was fake.
And he got tons of shit for that. It
ruined his life.
Ruined
his life. It's when you're too early, it fucks you up. It's not good to be too early on something like that. And there's a long list. I actually posted on this. Like, there's a long list of substantial scholars that do believe it. And the cool thing is, the historicists don't like debating them. Bart Ehrman refuses to. He got offered $10,000 to argue with Richard Price, and he went, nah. He doesn't want $10,000. He just wants to be interviewed with these very agreeable girls now because he doesn't like even talking about mythicism. Chrissy M. Hansen, who's a huge issue with this cancel culture, she's a historicist. She, was one of the reasons why there was a big emphasis on these accusations on them. And it's like they don't have a great argument against what Richard Carrier's saying. There's just more of them. That doesn't mean anything that there's more scholars that have an opinion when they won't even engage with a substantial debate. Yeah, Price had that, but we all know that wasn't a great one.
Right. Earl Doherty's Jesus puzzle. And then people want to, I love all the time online, people will have read none of these books. They know none of the arguments. I've been following this like obsessively for like over 5 years now. Carrier has won the debate. He hasn't had a one-on-one debate with Bart Ehrman, but they've been having the debate like in the public forum and in their books and in their blogs and on shows and stuff. Bart Ehrman's book, Did Jesus Exist? And it's completely one-sided. It's so bad. And Bart Ehrman gets up, gaslights, strawmans, ad hominems, does his nervous laugh. Oh, you can't even question it. Oh, laughing. They got this book. It's Bart Ehrman and the Quest of the Historical Jesus. Frank Zindler, who wrote the book I showed earlier. Robert Price, Earl Doherty, Richard Carrier, responding to all of his shit.
And if we make a list of every claim about Jesus and we start removing everything we know isn't true, everything the Gospels don't agree on, everything we know was influenced from Jesus ben Ananias, everything that was influenced by other dying and rising gods like Dionysus and whatnot, there's basically nothing left. There was a million guys named Jesus. There was thousands of dudes were crucified in this regard. And so like, it's almost like we come across too many characters that were similar. There's all these sorcerers with messianic complexes, people with cults. I honestly think that it's not that there was no Jesus. It was a meme. It was just like we say Karen, and there actually are thousands of angry older ladies that ask to see the manager and complain about black people selling lemonade. They are a thing, but it was made into one person. And I think Jesus is an idea that actually does have value to. There was this phenomenon to this day. I could show you videos of dudes that think they're the Messiah today. Benjamin Netanyahu probably thinks he's the fucking Messiah. I mean, these people exist. Yeah. So it's not crazy to think that an abundance of people were like this. But we know the Gospels are, we can very safely say the Gospels are fiction. And it seems that when you strip away all of the disputed articles from the epistles and the letters we know are not Paul seems to not be describing the same Jesus.
Yeah, all the earliest letters of the Bible, Paul, Hebrews, 1 Clement, 1 Peter, James, Jude, none of them describe a Jesus in an earthly context. None of them are citing any sources or eyewitnesses that knew a Jesus. Not until much later is Jesus ever historicized, euhemerized, and placed into history and given a biography. I mean, it's that should be game over. And then the other problem is, like, with the methodology, all of these different, people that make careers on explaining who the real historical Jesus was, they all come up with different stuff. And all these different criteria are deeply flawed. Carriers got into. They can't agree on who this historical Jesus really was. And what Bart Ehrman and they like to say, well, the one thing everyone agrees on that we do know is that he was a Jewish preacher who was crucified. But you can see where the idea of the crucifixion would come from. Bart Ehrman in his book goes, they would never invent a crucified Messiah. Yeah, they definitely would. You can see it from the scriptures, the pierced one, and that sort of thing.
It reminds me of something that I don't have answers on this, but this idea that, I asked Tobias Singer, like, when you read this Jesus character, does it resemble what you foretell is supposed to be the Messiah, knowing that he already doesn't? And he went into all these details, like he doesn't match the Messiah prophecy. And so it's almost like, does that show us that the people that made these books, who were Jewish leaders, actually didn't sincerely think they were, at least the later stuff, the Gospels? It's almost as if it doesn't match the prophecy that well, it does in the sense that you're saying it, but like there's all these, the things that on the other side of the argument that almost sort of demonstrates what we're saying, that there was an insincere creation of these Gospels. There is this
intentionally created a false Messiah by ripping verses out of context to create him like a literary construct. I've wondered
because to them he doesn't fulfill the prophecies that you go into a lot, that are the really juicy part of all of this, that really is the other half of this. There's the correlations with the rules for the Gentiles and all that, and then there's these end prophecies, and it's like, clearly the story of Jesus does not fulfill those, the sort of Isaiah.
Well, there's some that they can't, like no more wars and peace on earth and the rebuilding of the temple. You can't make up a mythical Messiah that fulfills those, because if it didn't happen in the real world, just like you couldn't fake a Messiah that was a political king and warrior that conquered the Romans because the Romans were still in charge. So you couldn't fake that, but you could fake some unknown guy that got crucified and then appeared to a few of his most devout followers. You could invent that. And there wasn't one view of what the Messiah was. There was views of multiple Messiahs that were doing different things. There were heavenly Redeemer, Son of Man Messiahs in Enoch and elsewhere. But like the Jesus story, the Jesus Messiah is 100% rooted in prophecies which they were interpreting as being messianic. Like that's everything about him is to fulfill some prophecy.
Yeah.
Many of them messianic, some of them not messianic at all. They were just quote mining and cherry picking anything they could to like advance the story forward. But like Tovia Singer can call Paul a liar. He'll say, this is out of context and this wasn't messianic and nobody would fall for this for Gentiles and they're frauds and they're forgeries and they're liars. But like if I say it, they go, don't be anti-Semitic now. They didn't lie. It's all just a bunch of coincidences. Like,
technically we are all bowing down to Israel, so maybe they already did fulfill the prophecy.
Well, the Daniel 7 is all people of all languages have dominion over all the world. like that one.
Yeah.
And then in the Psalms of Solomon, it talks about how he doesn't conquer the earth with armies, but with the word of his mouth. So like the pen is mightier than the sword. They won and conquered theologically with the teachings, not with
Right.
military.
Yeah, we're pretty deep on this schedule, it seems, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay,
And
let's get back to
they're
this clip.
yeah, let's show it.
We got a little.
By the way, while you're loading this up, I feel so bad for Wes Huff because like we all know, I don't have to say it.
That he's gay?
We know he's gay. And I don't want to make that like I don't want to insult
don't
any gay
know.
listeners, but like there is a phenomenon of I've had a few like Mormon and Jehovah Witnesses guys come to my door, and like you meet these closeted guys and you could tell they've got a Jesus fantasy, and it's just like sad to me. I'm like, dude, just go man, go be gay. Stop learning about Jesus. I know he's ripped and he's got the six pack, but please, bro.
He does have a nice, beautiful family as well, but that doesn't mean that he's not. It's almost like you can't hide certain things. I thought that as soon as I first heard him, I was like, oh, this guy seems like he's gay. But he's also Canadian, too. So it could be a little bit of the Canadian.
Oh my God. Dude, I am so sorry. Dude, thank you for clearing that up. I had no idea he would. Yeah, Canadian gay is totally. It's like British gay. Like sometimes you don't know if someone's British or gay. Okay, dude, thank you so much for clearing that up. No, I take it all back. No, Weston, he's just Canadian.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
It seems to me we know more about Christ as an historical person than just about anyone else of his era. I mean, not literally anyone else, but
sorry to interrupt again, but that's like saying we know about Superman or Spider-Man, all of these thousands of comic books and movies, than like some Joe Schmo that has no internet presence and nobody really knows who he is, some hermit, right? That could be the same comparison there. What we know, a bunch of myths about a guy that were not written by eyewitnesses, no contemporary documentation of this guy, but okay, I'll keep going.
We know a lot about him. Do any serious people seriously doubt his existence?
I mean, I think I can comfortably say that of people who have accredited PhDs in some relevant fields.
You mean like Christian theology that went to theological seminaries? These people are not historians. They claim to be historians. See how he asked the question too? Do any serious people question this? So then now anybody that does question it, they smear you as not serious. See these little tricks they do here? Oh, and by the way, Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire hate Jesus so much, but they really want you to know that you're a fringe kook if you don't agree Jesus must have existed.
And I think I can comfortably say that of people who have accredited PhDs in some relevant fields, historiography, New Testament studies, biblical studies, classics, that would touch on historical.
Dude, biblical studies is not relevant. That means you went to Christian apologetic school and you were trained by priests and evangelical Christians. Dr. Carrier is a PhD in ancient history from Columbia, and he is the world expert on this topic. Are you going to debate Dr. Carrier, Wes Huff? He would get just smoked by Dr. Carrier. Man. Does Dr. Carrier get on Joe Rogan? Does he get on all these big podcasts? No. None of them are even interested in having a debate on if Jesus existed.
Yeah, every time I asked Richard when's the next debate, not only does he not really like doing them, he's like, people just won't do it anymore. There's too much footage of him absolutely destroying people. It's intimidating to disagree with him. He's disagreed with me on a few times on my show. Like he'll say something like, he said something about 9/11, and I'm like, I'm not arguing about 9/11 with Richard Carrier, even if like it's so scary to disagree with the guy.
Yeah, he's a good debater and he's extremely smart. I don't agree with him on everything, but no doubting he's extremely smart.
He's ChatGPT come alive, and just like ChatGPT has a perspective in programming, I think someone can be smarter than you and still have a bias. Just like Noam Chomsky will say something and I disagree with him, knowing that he has read 5 libraries of books and knows more than me and can probably process information better than me. But I still think Noam Chomsky has a bias,
Yeah. I remember Wes Huff came out after he blew up overnight with this Billy Carson debate and going on Joe Rogan. He did a video. He's like, I'm not going to debate anybody. But all of his followers think he's a genius and he's the best scholar and you're scared to debate him. We should all really push for a Richard Carrier versus Wes Huff Jesus mythicism debate. I think I want to see. I'm pissed that I'm not seeing a whole lot more debates with Richard Carrier. I thought Price did awful against Bart Ehrman. It's got to be Carrier versus Wes Huff. Needs to happen. You can't weasel out of this Wes Huff. He's too busy to debate anybody, but he'll go on every right-wing MAGA podcast to shill Jesus. Okay.
I don't think he'd do
Jesus.
I if there's enough pressure, it could happen.
I'd love it.
Me too. A good long one too, like 3 hours where they could really hash it out. Okay, let's go ahead.
You probably can count the people who doubt his existence on two hands. And that's probably for everybody who's currently holding an accredited degree in those fields.
Appeal to majority, appeal to popularity, appeal to consensus, appeal to Christian theologians. That's literally all the fallacies he's doing right now. Most people believe it, so it's true. Oh, people have never been wrong about something before. They do this every time. They don't talk about all the great evidence and proof and why we know for sure. They just go, oh, trust us, trust the experts.
The other thing he conveniently leaves out that the Christians always leave out is the fact that a lot of these scholars that believe in the historicity dismiss everything about Jesus. Bart Ehrman doesn't think almost anything is real. He dismisses
it's all
almost
myth, but
everything.
He was crucified. That's what Bart Ehrman's position. Actually, I shouldn't say that. He says some wild stuff. Like he thinks that Judas really did betray him. He said that shit, which just shows that he has no credibility. And he's been disproven and wrong about so much stuff.
Yeah.
And so many flawed arguments. Carrier has eviscerated him. That's why he refuses to debate him at all costs. He makes excuses like, oh, he's mean to me or something like that. That is cope. But yeah, that's a great point. You want to cite all these scholars and say everybody agrees? Well, all these scholars, since we're citing them as the experts, Jesus is mostly a myth and definitely not the Son of God. So they want to have it both ways. That's a good point.
And if we said that, he would say, "Oh, that's appeal to the majority." Right. And he would say what you said. Mm-hmm. It would be strategically not the case as soon as you show the fact that most of the top scholars are rejecting the supernatural claims.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right now. So it's not that nobody does, but it's that it's the evidence, like you said, Michael, is just so overwhelmingly substantial that even if you want to be a hyper skeptical scholar and say, well, we really can't know anything other than
what evidence? It's just so overwhelming evidence that everybody agrees. What evidence? What, Josephus? Where? I doubt he even is going to get into it.
And he was probably baptized by John the Baptist, and he was crucified under the leadership of the Roman governor Pontius Pilate, but really nothing else we can say about him. I mean, that's still granting that he existed, that he was, an influential Jewish rabbi, and that he was crucified. And so, the bare bones of that, and I think we can obviously say far more than that historically, to doubt his existence entirely is really pretty fringe.
Pretty fringe. And that's how they try to suppress it.
And Josephus, as you mentioned,
this is all we ever hear. Sorry, what was that?
And Josephus, as you mentioned, has a bunch of characters just like Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so Josephus has this collection of sort of these heroic guys. And so even if Josephus did say something similar, which clearly I do believe the idea that it's a forgery and whatnot, but
completely,
he had all these characters. Jesus ben Ananias, who is saying that Rome's going to take over Jerusalem, woe to Jerusalem, and then he's in a trial, and then he dies. It all resembles, and there's clear plagiarization in the Gospel of Mark, the first gospel. And so to me, there's almost no Jesus left to debate. I think that even if there was one guy that did inspire Paul, and Paul is talking about a guy, it really doesn't give us much because everything else is a lie.
Paul never talks about the Romans or Pilate killing Jesus. He says it's the archons of this age. And then in another verse, he talks about it's the archons of the air.
Yeah.
like ascension of Isaiah, being crucified in heaven by Satan and his demons, and the concept of the theme of the hidden Messiah, and they didn't recognize his plan and they didn't know who he was. Paul never says, he says explicitly that he only learned about Jesus, and all he knew of his gospel was he was crucified and buried and rose after the third day, and he only knew this not by talking from it to any man, but from revelation in Scripture, from mystical visions, being caught up into the third heaven, receiving revelations, which is just, I guess, thoughts or dreams after reading Scripture. The only way
Yeah.
the first Christians in the earliest layers of the Bible know about Jesus is from Scripture.
And it just so happens that a few years after the pagan Romans sieged Jerusalem, a Jewish guy with a Roman citizenship is preaching a different form of Judaism. It's just perfect. And then a few years later after that, Rome falls. And now we've got a bunch of rabbis on a stick all over Europe.
Yep.
Sad state of affairs.
Yep. And the Jews being kept separate and suffering while they're in the exile of Edom among Christianity, and then they have their return and their redemption, and now things are turning around for them, and they've got their state, and they've got the Christians on their side, repenting for the past persecutions, fulfilling all the prophecies as foretold, all according to the plan. Are we supposed to believe that they're not following a overarching messianic prophecy memes, and this is really just coincidentally all happening? I don't think so. I'm not a coincidence theorist. Okay, let's do a couple of power chats here, and then we'll get into the Epstein stuff for the rest of the 40 minutes. Unless you have anything else on the religious front you wanted to get off your mind.
I think if I was going to ask you questions, I think you've done a lot of this, and I know it might be ground you've already tread and whatnot, but I really want to know so that I know where you stand, because I've read you read out the quotes and I've heard your commentary, but I want a clear description as to where you think all of this connects to what's going on right now, because that's the topic that even though it's a very interesting thing for me, I try to keep it a bit kosher on YouTube so that I don't get in any trouble. I'm in a few situations that I have to be a bit kosher. So now that I'm on your show, I'd love to just clearly understand where you think these end time prophecies, these horrible prophecies, line up with Christianity and the modern world. And I know that's a big question, but that's I want to know where you actually stand. Do you genuinely think that the leaders of Israel and the top of this community, these rich Zionists, are influenced by these end time prophecies? Where do you stand on this?
Well, obviously it's not monolithic. Not all of them do, but there's no denying that influential in Israel, rabbis around Netanyahu, he's meeting with Chabad Lubavitch, groups like that, they're obsessed with hastening their Moshiach and the third temple and fulfilling their prophecies, the downfall of Edom, and the Christian role. Christians, evangelical Christianity, the number one religion in America, they believe, and not just them, also Catholic and Orthodox, all believe that these prophecies, the birth pains of the Messiah, the end times, the second coming, they believe in all of this stuff. So in order for Jesus to return and for God's plan to unfold, basically Judaism's prophecies have to be fulfilled. They have to return to the land, rebuild their temple, anoint a Messiah who some Christians will think is the Antichrist, mark of the beast, technological control over the financial system and buying and selling, end times wars or rumors of wars. And then, have you heard the term I've talked about, hyperstition?
Right.
The idea that if you convince
you
people
manifest things. So like
Right.
your girlfriend believes she's a Gemini, and
Mhm.
Gemini bullshit happens to her, even though there's no inherent value to being a Gemini. But because your girlfriend thinks she's a Gemini, she brings reality to her beliefs. And that just as a sort of practical example.
Yeah.
You're
Or
manifesting.
if you believe prophecy is inevitable and it's God's will, that people try to hasten it, or they sit back and let it happen, or when it happens they act like they're opposed to it, but they're still kind of thinking they're trusting the plan and that it needs to happen.
Yeah.
So there is some hyperstition. All of these beliefs is manifesting these end times prophecies, and it doesn't happen. If it doesn't happen right now, if it hasn't happened in the past, it's always going to be an inevitable threat while people still believe these things. So forever,
Right.
for 2,000 years, Christians have been thinking the end times are here, and this guy's the Antichrist, and the Messiah is about to come. Muslims and Judaism, the same thing. But we've been lucky it hasn't happened so far. And there are
I think
people in influential governments, half the planet believes these prophecies. The prophecies is how they control us. It is a mind virus with hyperstition, and they are connected to influential politicians and people in military and government. So,
Yeah, regardless of whether there's literally meetings between top rabbis, like the next part of the plan, the evil
Yeah.
plan is this. I'm sure reality is always messier than theory. But at the end of the day, as you say, even if we dismiss the idea that there's an actual connection between these prophecies and what we're seeing, there's a resemblance. We're seeing they literally quote the prophecies. So like, it's not that fringe. At the end of the day, whatever's going on, we know that we are beyond the world of conspiracy theory. Half of the stuff that people like you and I were warning people about, they are now a reality. They are on the news. We know now that ICE just got a budget of $45 billion. And hey, I don't know precisely what that means, but I know it's unprecedented amounts of money being, and I'm sure that whatever happens in that might resemble a prophecy, but regardless, what we're going through is absolutely frightening. And I think some of us are getting lost in the scope. It's, to use a metaphor, like in war, a sniper can be so focused on what's going on 3 miles away, and it's so interesting that we're forgetting the reality of it. We're actually in a situation that is truly horrifying. Palantir is the sort of digital global Zionist fascism that we were worried about, and it's here. Like we're
beast system, and Peter Thiel's always talking about the Antichrist. Like, imagine that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people
closely with Israel and Palantir, and even Jeffrey Epstein invested $40 million into Palantir, and they kept that hush hush for
guys like
obvious
you and
reasons.
me that have put our faces to these ideas. I don't think there's a lot we can do. We can tighten up a little bit, but I think a lot of people that have one foot in this need to rope it in a little bit, because what we're talking about, it's getting to the point where it's interesting to watch this unfold, but a lot of people need a plan. And when I say that, I don't mean bullets and beans in a bunker. It's like you have to have a plan for this fucking digital fascism. I mean, we're looking at the only precedent is what we see in China. And China is in a state where they could never get out of that. If a group of people within China were to start some sort of a movement against the current regime, they would be found out. It's too late to stop what we were warning about. It's here. And we don't really get a lot of credit for having said it. I made a video saying like, hey, like digital fascism is under the way. Now that it's here, it's like, okay, some of you guys need to rope it in and make sure that you're not incriminating yourself. Stop posting shit that is truly passing the line, and let the people that are already, if someone has a stream and they're going on about Zionism, it's too late for us, but some people need to start realizing the reality that we're in right now. And it's entertaining, but I think people need to really sober up. This shit's real.
Yeah. And I think the threat is going to persist as long as people still believe in these prophecies. One of the greatest way to avoid World War III and Gog and Magog and all these end times wars that are part of these religion is to have everybody not believe in them anymore. Our chances of them happening will decrease so much if there aren't all these people thinking it's God's plan and it has to happen at a minimum. And they'll
As
follow
ang-
them loosely. Things will happen, and they'll try to kind of spin it that it was fulfilled. They do all these tricks. Like in the case of Christianity, it's fake prophecy fulfillment. They'll say prophecies were fulfilled when they really weren't. They'll just create myths, you know.
Yeah.
So
The
here's a little
overfun-
receipt. You'll like this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, like the you see in the sort of anti-Zionist Christian crowd, there's all this emotion. There's all this. Stu Peters screams like fucking Talmud, all this shit. And then at the end of the day, they're like, well, what's the answer? Oh, we'll just keep watching.
Yeah.
Keep
Trust in
keep
Jesus.
watching.
Pray to
Yeah,
Jesus.
it's a
The satanic
passive
third temple,
movement.
but it needs to happen, and Jesus is going to
Yeah.
come and save us.
It's the cathartic energy. Let's get really angry and anti-Semitic, but watch it unfold. Don't take any action. It's
God
passive,
wins. God wins
yeah.
in the end. That's their motto.
Don't act at all, please. Just watch. Jesus is coming. We believe that that all of these Jews will be. It's going to be corrected with the magic Jew. He's going to come
Nothing
down.
can save us but Jesus. That's another one we
Yeah.
hear a lot too. There's
All
no
this
political
emotion.
solution. Only Jesus can save us.
Yeah.
Okay, how's this for a receipt, by the way? Kabbalah, nobody's going to poo-poo this source. This is Gershom Scholem. He's like the most respected Kabbalistic or scholar of Kabbalah. I don't think he really believes in Kabbalah, but he's the top scholar. Look at this one. So Solomon, some Kabbalistic rabbi, his visions and discourses were a mixture of Kabbalah and incitement to political activity for messianic purposes among the Christians. This was 500 years ago. So, inciting politics for messianic purposes among the Christians. This is what we see happening. So, don't tell me that Chabad and Trump and the Christian Zionists, there's not something going on here. It's been going on for 500 years at least, according to Gershom Scholem.
Yeah, I think it's more than this idea of the blackmail. That can't just be it. Obviously, he's got 200 million from AIPAC. There's probably is blackmail, but there's something more to it. There's too much incentive behind Trump. He's not acting like someone that's just being blackmailed. He's on board.
He's on board. Maybe he's on board because of the blackmail. Maybe he's just he's on board and he's a part of the club that's doing the blackmail also.
Theoretically, if someone were to use AI to make fake blackmail, release that blackmail, fake Epstein footage, like release that, and then we'll see. That's the only way to verify it. If someone were to make fake Trump blackmail, just do it for the whole list and just release it, and then like we'll just see like if Trump goes, okay, now that's out, okay, that's a way to call their bluff.
You know, actually, with the latest, with everything happening, like he had the perfect opportunity. He was like, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And it seemed like, you know, Netanyahu stuff. If he was ever going to turn on Netanyahu, it would have been the way he was like, the corruption charges need to be dropped. And Netanyahu's a war hero and he deserves better. Like him going to bat for Netanyahu like that makes me think that Netanyahu has some serious dirt on him, or somebody connected to Netanyahu has some serious dirt on him. I always kind of wasn't so sure of it, but that more than anything made me think. And then now we got the Epstein cover-up, which we'll get to right now, the rest of it after these super chats.
Yeah, and he's got a long history of being in that community, you know, with his father and all that. So who knows if he's just truly on board or not.
Yeah, he wants to be on the winning team. He sees the power and the influence, and he wants it. He likes them fanning his ego. He wants to be the winner, and he sees them as the winners. It could be as simple as that.
Yeah, he is a front runner.
Okay, so we're gonna go to this screen and turn these power chats on. I believe there's some, and then we'll finish with the Epstein stuff. It's been a good talk. I'm glad you joined us, Mr. Think for Yourself. Let's see here. All right, any second now, Power Chat. Let's go. Shout out your what's your Twitter for people to follow you? You need some more
my
Twitter.
It's my second Twitter, by the way. I actually had another Twitter, got deleted, which is hard to do. Post Elon Twitter cancel is hard.
$16 why is the guest bashing European nobility? They fought against the Jews the hardest and were the primary target of the Jews for a long time.
No, I wasn't bashing them. I was
Hold on.
mentioning.
We'll address it in a second. Let's
Okay,
play
The
okay.
Abraham Matrix sent $5 on Rumble. Proud first follow-up. Think for yourself on Twitter. I knew you guys were going to have a hard time not going into religion for a bit before any current news. Ha. Keep it up, guys.
Thank you.
John DeVito sent $5. Absolutely loving the discussion, guys. Awesome. Thank you.
Good discussion. Think for self is can keep up. Let's go.
John DeVito sent $5. Question for host and guest. Any thoughts or feelings on the sense that something major is about to befall the West, like a banking crisis and or a false flag ended Iran?
Yeah, I do. Fall of Edom. Is that it? Let's see. Okay, yeah. So
respond
the first
to
question that you wanted to address was
Yeah, so I was basically saying that there's a tradition, and you guys can look this up, of crown rabbis. These were, is that me, the echo?
yeah. There we go. Sorry.
Okay, so there was a whole class of crown rabbis who were these financial based guys that would call themselves a crown rabbi when they
The
weren't
court
religious.
Jews is another
Yeah.
term, right?
Yeah, I'm always trying to censor myself. I've got a bad habit of that. And so the crown rabbis was this whole class of people that weren't genuinely religious. And I was just mentioning that as the people that I was investigating, they're more of that persuasion. They are not the kinds of guys that we see in these videos that you guys have compiled, which is a great work you guys have done. And it's I thought I had seen too much footage of rabbis. I really got to put it to you, man. Your eyes have seen way too many fucking rabbis. But I just made the distinction that there were these crown rabbis that would influence these inbred Habsburg Europeans. And so people see the Habsburgs as like, oh, they were genuine Gentiles, but they forget that they were being influenced. And so is Russia. Russia had crown rabbis. And I was just sort of mentioning that, how there's a distinct class of the financial side. And then there's the sort of the more radical religious rabbis that we have fun watching. But at the end of the day, those guys, they might be the crazier radical ones. They know the scripture better. They're more religious. They're not necessarily the guys that are always influencing politics as much as these sort of crown rabbi types, which is still technically a tradition. They don't have that actual position, but I was just sort of connecting that to the rich Jews. How about we use that term?
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that at all, by the way, like hating on European nobility. I mean, but Christian, also, I think there was a sense of like some of the Christian leaders of Europe, they would see the Jews like they know a lot about the Torah. They have a deep understanding. They know secrets. They understand the scriptures inside and out. They're our old elder brothers in faith. Like Christians have long thought that they can learn from the Jews and were interested in their insights into Christianity and religion and stuff.
And
well,
it
not
actually
just
connects
on the banking merchant front.
And it connects to what we were talking about earlier, how they made this distinction when they created Christianity for the Goyim, is they followed this tradition of telling them that they're not allowed to lend anyone else money with interest. So they banned usury for the Gentiles, and then they were told that they should. They're actually encouraged to lend with interest. And so that actually applied to these European leaders who I'm not, there's things to bash, but I'm not wasting my time bashing European leaders that were all removed by these people eventually. But like, we can see how they were financed by these crown rabbis. They were the financiers. And so the distinction of how Christians, so if you're a Christian king, so I went to Neuschwanstein Schloss, the castle that's in Bavaria, and it's the most beautiful castle in the world. This guy, the king, he took out loans from these sorts of people, and he was in debt because, so even though he's the king, he's in debt because of usury. So even these rich kings that you learn about, they were subject to this system, and it's irrelevant to the distinctions of Christianity. They created Christianity strategically, whether or not they lost control or not, they created a cuck secondary version of Judaism. And that still affects us to this day. Our boomer parents are victims of usury. This is not just ancient history.
I agree. And there's verses in the Old Testament that talk about like it's weird that the Jews were allowed to lend, but then in the New Testament there's a verse in Luke that kind of like alludes to not expecting to be repaid in full for lending. But it's weird how they did convince the Christians that it's a sin to money lend, but then they were allowed to do it. It wasn't a sin for them, apparently. I don't know how they convinced the Christians that it's sinful for Christians to money lend, but it's not sinful for them to do it. And the Christians went along with this, which led to them having a monopoly on banking and money lending.
And then let's have Jesus tell the Goyim that they should be extremely pacifist. And if someone strikes them, allow them to strike you again. But it says in our book, if someone is going to strike you, rise up early and strike them first.
Right.
What an amazing, convenient distinction to create. So let's neuter the Europeans that once sieged Jerusalem and make them overly pacifist. Obviously, Christians still engage in violence, but imagine if we were never pacified. Jesus.
And then there's clips of rabbis going, "Oh, like through Jesus, we domesticated the barbaric pagans, right? And now we taught them morals. They wouldn't have morals without us." That's what the rabbis say. And then I'll debate with Christians, and that's the same thing they say to us too, as well, as if there weren't morals before Jews or Jesus. It's absurd.
Yeah. What is your idea? So like you mentioned paganism, but I very rarely hear sort of in the affirmative. Do you do any sort of like meetups with paganism, or like what is?
No, I'm not a pagan. I don't believe in pagan gods. I don't do pagan rituals. I don't, sometimes I do it like with my Thor here, when the rabbis hate on our pagan gods or say the Christians say they're satanic fallen demons and stuff. The fact that Judaism is about conquering our ancestral faiths, this is just me to spite them, basically.
And everyone can do that, even if someone's not a European watching.
Right.
If you're freaking African or South American, you guys all had culture. And although I'm an atheist, I think if there's a list of things that I think there's some magic to that I don't understand. But one of the things that I've found is that our genetics can be expressed in a place. You go to your homeland. If you're Irish, go to Ireland. If you're Norwegian, go there. Like there's something about how your genes are like taking a flower that's supposed to be in Mexico to Mexico. You'll see it bloom. There's something about that. And so I love nature. I make videos where I'm always in this non-American forest all the time. And I love connecting to nature. So although I don't celebrate paganism either, I do love that what you're saying. That's basically where I stand too. I love the idea of sort of like remembering, hey, before this European or wherever you guys are, there was a culture prior to this colonization. We were colonized. Our ancestors were hoodwinked.
Yeah, and the fact that like it was done with the intent that Jesus was meant to conquer the ancestral faiths. That's why it's reverse course. I'm agnostic. I'm non-religious. I don't believe in these gods, but I haven't read much into them. But the idea of like these were the archetypes and the characters and the fables that my ancestors used to use to teach morals or to teach behavior or their understanding of the world. I find that interesting. And if we're even going to be like honoring or revering any myths, it should be our own people's myths, not the Jewish ones. Not if we're going to have any gods, believing them or not, let's make sure that they weren't created by the Jews and that they're our own and they don't tell us salvation is of the Jews and that the Middle East is our holy land or any of that stuff, obviously.
I also do like the idea that idolatry bothers them. And so I don't want to break all of the Noahide rules. I don't want to commit murder or theft. And I'm a vegan, so I can't eat the limb of a living animal. But by committing idolatry, even if I don't sincerely believe it, it's a way of not being Noahide. I need to make sure that I'm not a Noahide cuck.
The first two, blasphemy and idolatry, my two favorite pastimes.
There we go. Don't commit murder, guys, though.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's do this. Let's do.
Is it
So this is a little
Epstein
small,
time?
but the Axios has a new report out. The DOJ and FBI have concluded now that Epstein had no client list and he died by suicide. So the first thing with the quote client list, like I wasn't assuming like they had some Epstein black book that said every single influential person and what girl he was on film with and how he's blackmailed. Like I didn't expect that there was a list like that, like a cartoonish list. But this just goes to show they're not going to name anybody. It's a complete cover up. Everybody involved, right? And to see Trump gaslit and lied to everybody. He said, promising on the campaign trail, he gets in, he's going to release the Epstein list. And it
No
didn't
new
happen.
war. If
No
it
new
was
war,
me, there
too.
wouldn't be any war.
So here's the first one. Here he is with,
To
what is this guy's name? I can't even remember. He's so forgettable.
It's Lex Friedman.
Lex Friedman, right. Here we go. Here's the first one.
But a lot of big
Dude.
people went to that island. But fortunately, I was not one of them.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it?
He's like, oh, I never went to the island. You were friends with him for 10 years. And he's had your phone number in a whole bunch of his phone books. There's your photograph with him over and over again, Anne Ghislaine Maxwell. But, oh, you didn't go to the island. Okay, what about his New York penthouse? Were you ever there? This whole, like...
That's the thing. That's what I was going to say.
I didn't go to the island. So what?
He was friends with him, best friends with him before the island. He was in the New York scene. So he's such an old school friend of him. And he broke away when there was starting to be a bit
That
of
island.
smoke.
But a lot of big people went to that island.
And you're not
But
going to learn about any
fortunately,
of them.
I was not one of them.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way.
Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be.
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it. Now, Kennedy's interesting because it's so many years ago.
Quickly switches it to Kennedy. We'll think about it. Dude, fell for it again award. Who imagine being so gullible you really were naive enough to think Trump was going to give you the truth about Epstein. Come on.
Second term,
You know,
baby.
they do that for
when you're in the
danger, too.
second
Yeah.
term, you don't got to worry about holding your promises anymore. You do that in the first term. You got to be a little bit honest in the first. He's in that second term, baby. He could fucking start alligator Auschwitz with $45 billion being sent to the ice. It's go time.
Yeah, anti-Semitism laws, all the BDS, shutting down all the college campuses that are critical of Israel, all the weapons and bombing for Israel. Okay, let's hear the rest here.
Because, endangers certain people, et cetera, et cetera. So Kennedy is very different from the Epstein thing. But yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
Total lies, total lies. Here he is again now. Here's Elon.
Do you think Reid Hoffman? I think part
This was Elon pre-election.
I think part of why Kamala is getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public.
Yes.
And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome.
Yeah. Do you think Reid Hoffman?
I think.
How did that age? And then remember a couple of weeks ago, Elon tweeted, "You're not seeing the Epstein list because Trump is on it." And then he took that down. This was after he had a black guy in the White House too. Apparently because he got in a fight with somebody. And then now he's starting his own party. I wonder why. Or we talked about this before we went live. He is to not be trusted, and this could be more controlled ops, third party, fake opposition.
Just like RFK. RFK was given to us just because it was so heated that people were actually genuinely afraid that there might be a third party decision. And you got RFK, the vaccines, we think, oh, this is our guy. He's talking about conspiracies, COVID. We thought, dude, this guy's like literally, he said that the Ashkenazis had a higher fertility rate after taking the COVID vaccine. I'm like, dude, even I bought it. I'm a skeptical motherfucker. I was like, dude, he's like straight up saying,
You
like,
didn't see the Shmuley videos? I knew what he was when I saw the
No,
Shmuley and
I
visiting
didn't see
Chabad
that.
Lubavitch.
I just saw that he was spitting fire, man. This guy's like really. I bought it for a second, and then we say, nah, he's cucked and blackmailed by them. And then Jill Stein was given just in case for the leftists. She pops up every 4 years, claims to be, showed up to a pro-Palestine parade after 4 years of darkness, just as a sort of just in case you guys wanted to vote for someone else. Here's 2 extra. Elon Musk, I want to believe him so bad, but at the end of the day, his own father admitted that Bibi Netanyahu used to come over for breakfast. His mom is part of the club, quite literally. The guy's in big money. We don't know. I want to believe in Elon. If he can prove that he is to be trusted, I would be relieved. I hope that there is some savior messiah for us, because we're in deep shit. Apparently things are bad. I want to believe in this, but I won't be surprised if this is controlled op too. I hate to say it.
He goes back to Peter Thiel and PayPal mafia stuff as well. Like those are his origins. His dad was just over in Russia visiting the Kremlin at some Dugin conference with Alex Jones and all these other big Putin shills. So
you saw Ian Carroll's theory about Elon Musk. He's like, dude, like, what if, like, it's trippy, but like, check it out. Like, what if Elon's like fake and all these companies are just like other people, and they just have like Elon Musk be the face of it? That's how he's able to do so many things, man. He's like, it's trippy. Like, I don't know, but it's fucking wild, dude.
Wow.
It's just something like that.
Well, I've long said, like, I don't know it for a fact, but if Elon was like a technological front man for, let's say, I don't know, Mossad in Israel, we'd be in big trouble, given all of his influence with the self-driving cars and AI and Grok and Twitter and Neuralink and SpaceX and Starlink, and that's a whole lot of influence concentrated with one guy that seems to be somewhat of a stuttering, addicted to Twitter and ketamine type of guy. It seems very.
It's like Ozymandias from Watchmen, except he can't fight. Very similar character.
Here's your Tony Stark Iron Man savior, guys. Trust him. But I hope he keeps beefing with Trump at the very minimum for entertainment.
Yeah.
And I hope he says, sorry, guys, I meant it. He really is on the Epstein list. In fact, I saw here. Where is it? He was trolling libs of TikTok. Where is it? He said, any day now it's going to come out. He tweeted that this morning to libs of TikTok, who said, this is what it was. Watch. If Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public. This was, where is it? Shoot. Okay, I don't know where it's at. There it is. Anytime now. So see, libs of TikTok posted this before the election in 2024. Cernovich, she's retweeting Cernovich, by the way. And for you, you're aware, libs of TikTok is like a Hasidic princess from a top Chabad Lubavitch family in Los Angeles.
No, I was out of Twitter for a long time. I got banned from it right away, and then I started a new one just to like keep up with your stuff. So I barely.
Awesome.
I just got back into it. They banned me.
How long have you been familiar with me, by the way? I wanted to ask that.
So basically, while I was doing my investigation, I wasn't able to come out with the stuff I was accumulating. I wanted to start a show a long, long time ago, and I thought I was like gonna be sort of the fresh face of a lot of the stuff you're talking about. And then I saw my algorithm spits you to me on YouTube. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So this guy's
years
sort of
ago, you're saying?
Yeah, like I forgot exactly when.
Back
but
when I was still on YouTube, then is when you were watching.
Yeah, you were on YouTube. YouTube gave you to me because I was always researching Noahide stuff. I was always reaching the Jewish prophecies, and you pop up. I'm like, oh man, this guy's not only doing this topic that I'm researching, you're killing it. You're going over like you have a whole thing that I could never do. So I was like, at first I got that feeling when someone sort of gets something before you. And then because I couldn't do my channel, I was so relieved and I was entertained by your show. So like for a while, I was just watching it on YouTube. Then you got banned. Was it because of conduct or was it because of like copyright stuff?
It was like a big ban wave. They were banning a bunch of people. It was right before the election. They had a huge crackdown, which I don't know why. I'm constantly like exposing Trump. So, but it was right before the 2020 election. You know, it's
Right.
just they got to a point where more and more was not allowed. Like at the point you can't. Like one of my last videos that got censored before my whole channel was banned was when the thing blew up in Beirut, and I'm like, was this Israel did this? Like oh, that's beyond the pale. You can't question a huge explosion in Lebanon. Like they're only bombing them all the time now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, it's
They
just
make it so
criticizing
the
Zionism,
censorship
not
is
allowed.
so bad
Mhm.
that they're actually helping us because we could never get our message across better than some of these shills that are so obvious. I mean, Jordan Peterson, it's now so obvious that he's on the payroll to do this whole Judeo-Christianity bullshit. That's his school project. We can see these shills are so bad at this job that they actually help us. And the censoring, I got censored a long time ago, and it made me radical overnight. I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, as soon as I say that, I said all this other stuff. Nothing happened. And I said something critical of Israel, and now I lost my account to something.
I
It's
don't
like,
think it's helping us though. Getting banned from YouTube is
Yeah.
a huge loss. There's all these other people that are still on there, and the people watching them don't know. They don't know what else is out there. They
Right.
agree with them. They agree with the people they think are on YouTube. They think that's the best there is out there. And now I'm on Rumble, which is like owned by all these Zionists and growing slower than ever. And they, you know, the other platforms that were the alternatives are basically dead platforms, and you can't get any, you don't get picked up in the algorithm and reach new people. And there's so many, they're dominated by so many Christian viewers too. So it's just,
it's terrible.
it's
It
not good.
radicalizes the person that got censored.
That's
but
true.
but it takes away your audience. And I had an Instagram that I was putting. I wanted my Instagram to be more radical, and my YouTube was G-rated. And then my Instagram just got. I didn't even get warned. It was just like, boom, you're done. Nothing. And it was just like, I wasn't even. I've seen people post really crazy stuff. There's gore videos. There's horrible things on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I was banned. And then when I got banned on post-Elon Twitter, not even being that, it's like when you get too close to the truth, that's when you get really censored. And I made a
And they were
video.
working with the ADL too. The ADL was working closely with YouTube and Facebook and PayPal and all of these organizations that these tech companies that have banned me. And it's just all they got to do is send an email, provide a list and some links, and they just ban all of them. It's like not even any questions asked. And their standard is if you're talking about Zionism, like in any negative context, you're banned. Like that's literally the rules that they enforce. Like conspiracies about like Zionism or Judaism taking over the world or ruling the world, like are banned everywhere. That's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. That's literally straight from the Torah. So we can't play clips of rabbis, hours of rabbis talking about this. We can't read verses directly from the Torah. That's a conspiracy. So that's what it's about.
Insane. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that I made a video trying to I was so concerned that I might be spreading the wrong message, and I wanted to take responsibility. And I made a whole video about how, like, hey, don't give into hatred. A lot of what we're talking about are the high ups. We're talking about leaders, powerful people, and the common practitioner of Judaism is just brainwashed. And in a religion, these people are harmless. I tried to make this huge distinction, like a pre-apology, like, hey, I don't want to incite hatred. Please, the normal common man practicing Judaism is not someone to hate, or and even someone that's from Israel. Like, I went out of my way to make the distinction, and I actually got attacked more than anything, and I had to take that video down. I got these crazy comments, people reporting that video. It angers them when you make the distinction. If you try to say, hey, look, I'm not trying to spread hatred here, I'm just trying to focus on the people in power, they actually go on you harder. There's a reason they'll never put guys in the KKK in Alligator Auschwitz. They'll never put the actual genuine radical dudes that have the flags parading with, these images. That's not what they're worried about. They're actually worried about you being sort of reasonable about it. They don't want that more than anything. They want you fully crazy off the deep end, so hateful that most people are turned off by you.
Yeah.
If you try to be reasonable about it and try to apologize, that's the people they attack the most.
Yeah, the clown cartoonish ones, they'll highlight, they'll quote you and put you in headlines, they'll clip you up and spread you around because it helps their narrative, because you're counterproductive. But you say it's not all Jews, it's not every Jew, it's not only Jews. The Jews are ultimately really the masses of them are victims of this Judaism lie, just like Christians and Muslims are as well. And any of that stuff, and they all ignore that, of course, and just say, oh yeah, everything is hate and you hate for no reason and you're an evil person. So yeah, we know the games.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
This is the best clip of Trump. Yeah, everybody should have known that you weren't going to get any of the Epstein details. They couldn't even give us like a watered down, like only blaming the liberals section of it. You got literally nothing. Watch this.
By the Epstein files. Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah. I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know it. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there, because there's a lot of phony stuff.
A lot of phony stuff in these files.
Funny stuff.
Can you believe this, dude? Not as much so. Yes, not as much so, though, because there's a lot of phony stuff. Like, it might say stuff about me. It's phony, definitely phony. You don't want any of my friends to get involved and roped into this scandal. You know what I mean? And now we got nothing.
People's lives if it's phony stuff in there, because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would.
Do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others.
Would you declassify?
Isn't it such a joke?
My old best friend. And I think one of you guys needs to make a boomer propaganda video that we can all use to get our fathers radicalized. Like, there's an issue with I try to radicalize my dad so hard. I try to show him stuff. And then as soon as Fox News shows up, he's back. He's gone. As soon as he sees this orange fuck, I lose him. It doesn't matter what I showed him. He's just like, yeah, I'm part of this club. Oh, yeah. Say,
Why does
please,
he sound
someone
like a
give
rabbi? Why do you do the rabbi voice?
I'm from New York. My dad is not Jewish. He's actually.
Is he Catholic still? You said you were raised Catholic.
He was Catholic. He's mostly Irish, and my mom is from Colombia, and so they had the Catholicism in common, but they're not heavily religious. But yeah, the dude is just, and Fox News and CNN are both just controlling our parents. These boomers are the last stronghold they have. And so someone please make a propaganda. We need two, one for the liberal boomers and one for the right-wing boomers. Get all the clips of Nixon saying stuff about Israel, and like they'll believe their peers. They don't believe anyone under 60. So we need a boomer propaganda video. Someone please.
Good idea. Operation Save the Boomers. Here's another one about the update on the Epstein files. Dude, I'm having trouble with this. There we go.
Jeffrey Epstein. ¿Nos puedes dar un update?
Yeah, I would say just release it. He was somebody that was, I guess you'd have to say, notorious. And I would say release it. And I did release the full Kennedy files. People said, well, maybe not everything. And I said, if anybody has a problem, go to the office. We gave them an office address, and they can look at every single piece of paper we have and other files. And as you know, the January 6th and all of that, we freed the people. They were treated so badly. There's never been.
It's a messianic thing to free the captives. That's a messianic verse. Free the captives. He
Isn't
came
there
in,
a thing
freed the
about
hostages? He freed the January 6 prisoners. Forgot about that one.
What are the other things he fulfills? Isn't there a thing about getting injured on your head?
Yeah,
Something
the
like
Antichrist
that,
survives a deadly head wound.
Right. So the theory could be that he doesn't know it, but they're making him the Antichrist. Is that if it was the case?
Or if he thinks anything, he probably thinks that they're selling him as a messianic figure to everybody.
Right.
Which he knows that. There's no way he doesn't know that people see him as the savior. He's saying he was saved by God from the assassination attempt, saved by God to save the world. God saved him for a purpose.
Jewish God.
Jewish God. Help me, Jewish God. My soundbite.
And I mean, there have been some pretty bad instances, but there's
Okay, we don't need to hear the rest of that one. Now here's Epstein talking about Trump right before the election. They leaked this. He said they were best friends for 10 years.
Charming. He is able to convince people, so he tells everybody what they want to hear.
So how do you know this?
Donald's closest friend.
He has a sense of humor. He can be funny.
Donald's closest friend for 10 years, guys.
They never banged kids.
Never.
It just never showed up, never came up. You know what? The other thing is they all have strange penises. So they said that Epstein had an egg-shaped penis.
Mm-hmm.
They say that Trump had a small mushroom orange. I don't know if it's orange. So like that seems to be a thing. Don't trust anyone with a strange phallus. That's always someone you want to not trust.
Or circumcised. Just kidding.
Yeah.
All right,
Too late
here's
for
one
me, I
of
was
the
Catholic.
Trump representatives on Piers Morgan. They fumbled this so bad. It's like a slap in the face to everybody. Like with Pam Bondi and these clips we're going to get in here, they're like, yes, there's truckloads. It's so bad. We're going to release it all. They had the binders we're going to show in a second too. And then now, oh, sorry, there's nothing there. Like it's unbelievable. This is going to go down decades and decades, like if we're still around, like a conspiracy like the JFK stuff. They could be talking about Epstein 50 years from now and the cover up of all of our government being blackmailed by Israel. Watch.
And the hologram streams.
Flight logs, names, shocking information. It's all going to be coming out. Sorry, guys. Nothing to see here now. Who is this woman, by the way? We don't know her name. But she's a looker.
The worst thing is Ghislaine's father is its own can of worms.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute insanity. How deep that story gets.
Mossad agent.
Upon other things. I mean,
Right.
it was...
I've heard MI6. I've also heard Kremlin Russia stuff possibly too. He was working with all these governments selling Promise software, which is the stolen Israeli like spy tech.
Like Pegasus?
Yeah. I think it was the predecessor to Pegasus, I want to say.
That there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now go through your process. Now, I won't say they're guilty until they go through their time in court. But again, now it's time for accountability. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway, we don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Cash and Pam, there will be accountability. But in this...
Oh, fell for it again. I think people maybe missed the beginning audio. I didn't have it switched to the right tab, so...
This case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now...
No accountability, guys. Remember this? Remember this little psyop that Pam Bondi tried to run with all these Zionist influencers? Like libs of TikTok here. DC Drano, Mike Cernovich, Jack Posobiec, all the people that like have been involved with this cover up for a while. Jack Posobiec. One of my friends, my Jewish friend, Jeremy, he confronted him and said, when are we going to hold Epstein and the Mossad blackmail network accountable? And he's like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about that. I don't know. He was so shook. You want to see that? It's short.
At the end of the day, the list that we were given, I'm going to believe that until proven otherwise. If they want an incentive, that's their motivation. We already got a list. That's the list we believe now. I think Bill Gates was there and he banged kids. If you can prove that he wasn't, go ahead. But it doesn't. But they're not going to incriminate themselves at the end of the day. It was an intelligence operation, and it wasn't just Israel. A lot of people forget Israel, and they're within us. It's hard to describe what it is, the relationship, but it's one and the same.
Well, if it wasn't one and the same, our government, our intelligence agencies would expose it that we're being blackmailed by Israel. But they're obviously involved in it, the cover up also. So here's the Jack Posobiec confronted, but I'm sure he's going to give us the truth. Watch this. Come on, let's load.
It's totally free. Sure. I'm not selling them or anything. There you go. Oh, great. Thank you so much.
We're going to get in Jeffrey Epstein being an Israeli military intelligence agent.
I don't know what to think about that.
It's pretty bad.
Crazy.
Want some stickers there?
His main contributor, Les Wexner, was one of the leading propagandists for the Iraq War. Do you know that?
There you go, guys.
Taking advantage of American girls to compromise American politicians for foreign.
Jeffrey Epstein got what he deserved, that's for sure.
What? I thought he killed himself.
It's a network.
That's true, and the network needs to be taken out.
All right, how
no question.
Do you think Trump should actually support rooting out the network that he was involved
Trump
in?
Trump should absolutely take out the Epstein network. No question. No
His lawyers.
question.
It's sort of hard to take out the network when your lawyers are part of it.
Totally free if you want to. Oh, okay.
That's it.
I think it was Hamas that did the Epstein Island thing.
Yeah,
only
Qatar.
Maybe Qatar. Yeah, Qatar. They have the money, but then Hamas is the puppet.
Mm-hmm.
That makes more sense.
You know who else was there to get a binder? Oh wait, I think you're echoing. Do you hear echo? No, maybe because I bring the video down, it went away. Cernovich was also there to get the binders as well. So let's hear what he had to say about this situation before Epstein was arrested.
But what I don't like is people who are biased, and we all have them. I don't like that I hear people immediately go to the Clintons or Mossad, because that's just not sophisticated, first of all, and it's vaguely anti-Semitic. Mossad. Well, why? If Epstein were with Mossad, he'd be with the FBI too, right? You really think if Jeffrey Epstein was working for Mossad, that our own FBI wouldn't have intercepts of those conversations, right? So why just jump? Oh, Mossad.
Oh, you mean the FBI that caught the 5 dancing Israelis and let them go back to Israel?
You don't
That
think
FBI?
Israel can figure out encrypted messages between Mossad and one of their agents in America? Like, come on. And yeah, we get it. Yeah, maybe our government is in bed with not maybe they are in bed with Mossad, and maybe they're blackmailed too, or they're just collaborators. But still, he says it's anti-Semitic to say Mossad was involved. This is the guy that was involved with Dershowitz in his lawsuit with some of these Epstein victims as well. All of these huge MAGA influencers saying it's anti-Semitic. They were there to get the binders with that little psyop that they had running. Now, watch this. This is insane. The Pam Bondi flashback promising the truckloads, and we're going to reveal it all, and it's shocking, and there's all these videos, and now there's nothing. No list, no names. And we know so many of the names already. Ryan Dawson's been doing this. Whitney Webb has been exposing these networks as well. Here we go.
Be releasing the list. The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
Now there's no list. The head of the DOJ said it's on her desk. They're reviewing it, truckloads, and then now they didn't exist. What list? What are you talking? What anti-Semite? What? The list? What are you even talking about? Can you believe this?
Lists are anti-Semitic.
Right. We know that. Schindler's List, come on.
Come on.
Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files, That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll check back with you.
Okay. Now here she is again.
We got them all by hopefully. We all did. And the FBI handed over a couple hundred pages of documents. But, you know, Sean, I gave them a deadline of Friday at 8 a.m. to get us everything. And a source had told me where the documents were being kept, Southern District of New York, shock. So we got them all by, hopefully all of them, Friday at 8 a.m., thousands of pages of documents. I have the FBI going through them, and Cash is also, now that we have Cash here, it's a game changer, of course, and Cash is going to, Director Patel, is going to get us a detailed report as to why the FBI withheld all of those documents.
Okay.
Well, remember, in Trump's first term, he appointed Alex Acosta, who was, I think, the DA, or he was involved with, like, the cover-up and a slap on the wrist for Epstein when he was facing charges in Florida. And then he got a cushy job from Trump. And she's from Florida as well. And now look what's happening.
On the bright side, the fact that we're going to get this digital fascism, at least maybe they'll drop this facade and they'll just be authoritarian, because it's sort of a waste of a time. We have to watch this big charade, this left versus right stuff. Maybe when Palantir fully sort of realizes itself, we could just get our directions without all this bullshit.
Hey, QAnon says they're saving Israel for last, and Trump is going to take out Epstein and save us from the pedophile cabal. That's totally happening, right? How's that aging?
I want to be clear, because I think people got frustrated because they were expecting more. You were expecting more, and you didn't find out less than 24 hours before the release. You got a whistleblower that confirmed that there were way more documents that they were supposed to turn over, and then you found out just before that.
Well, sure. And you're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. You know, there were flight logs, there were names and victims' names. And we're going, where's the rest of the stuff? And that's what the FBI had turned over to us. And so a source said, whoa, all this evidence is sitting in the Southern District of New York. Yep. So based on that, I gave them the deadline, Friday at 8, a truckload of evidence arrived. It's now in the possession of the FBI. Cash is going to get me and himself, really, a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been withheld. And, you know, we're going to go through it as fast as we can, but go through it very cautiously to protect all the victims of Epstein. There are a lot
I'm sure we're about protecting the victims and not the perpetrators. Wow.
We're not worried about incriminating ourselves.
I think it was it Virginia Giuffre? She just like committed suicide a couple months ago. Guys, chat, what's the other girl? Maria Farmer. She died from brain cancer or something as well, right? Funny that we're really taking care of those victims, aren't we, guys?
A lot of victims.
Well, you had identified in phase one over 254. Okay. Now, is that the only thing that would be redacted? Will everything else be made public that you get in your possession?
Yeah, the FBI hasn't had, obviously, they haven't looked at the thousands of pages of documents that they've just received Friday. Yeah. But Cash has a team going through them, and it's always about protecting the victim. But you know what? We believe in transparency, and America has the right to know. The Biden administration sat on these documents. No one did anything with them. And why were they sitting in the Southern District of New York? I want a full report on that. You know, sadly, these people don't believe in transparency, but I think more, unfortunately, I think a lot of them don't believe in honesty. And it's a new day. It's a new administration. And everything's going to come out to the public. The public has a right to know. Americans have a right to know.
And that goes the same with the JFK files,
JFK,
RFK files,
Martin
MLK.
Luther King. Yep, absolutely.
What are the things that...
Okay. Unbelievable. Isn't this... How embarrassing. Like, how does she... I say, how does she still have her job? But she was put in to do this. She's doing her job right now. But people should demand resignation. Like, who I don't think the administration could lose any more credibility after this. This one's not playing.
Second term, man.
I know.
They don't have to play ball.
And then we were told, oh, it's the second term. Trump will take the Adelson money. He'll grovel to the rabbis. He'll take all the top Jewish awards. But when he's in, then he could do whatever he wants. But yet he's still doing everything they want, which makes me think it could be blackmail. Okay, this isn't loading. Here's the big one. Did you see this? Project Veritas got a secret recording of her at a brunch where she goes, oh, there's thousands of videos and it's so terrible. And then she came out and made a public statement saying same thing. And then now we're getting nothing.
Yesterday, Attorney General of the United States Pam Bondi was at the White House and disclosed what she represented as brand new information in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. The existence of tens of thousands of videos featuring little children.
There are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn.
Now, this is the first time an official has...
This is dumb. There's not going Epstein wasn't keeping blackmail on himself with children. He was keeping blackmail on influential people with young girls. That was the racket. But still, isn't this so funny? All of this stuff, like, do they think the internet like has the brain, goldfish brains, and we're not going to remember all this stuff, and we don't have all these clips? How do the chutzpah for them to think they can get away with this?
Our dads don't have the clips.
That's true.
Works on the boomers.
That videos of Epstein and his victims exist. What you may not know.
Guys, I understand. I don't know. StreamYard sucks. The desktop audio was really quiet for you guys. It's been a problem all along. Today's the last day I'm using StreamYard. I'm switching to a different platform, and hopefully it'll be better. I know.
Is my audio okay?
Our audio is good.
Okay.
For some reason, the desktop is super quiet, and it doesn't give me a way to lift it up.
Is just 9 days prior, the Attorney General had a very similar conversation with a total stranger in a restaurant.
Do you know when the Epstein files are going to get released?
We hope soon. The FBI has been.
Okay.
So.
Any dates?
No, you know what it is? There are tons of thousands of videos.
Yeah.
And it's all with little kids. So they have to go through every one.
In the past, officials have spoken about the, quote, mountain of evidence in the Epstein case. But they've never, previous to that moment, acknowledged on the existence of videos of, quote, little kids.
And we know that when Epstein was arrested, they confiscated a bunch of stuff from his safes at his New York apartment or penthouse. The Epstein list is on my desk, or there's no Epstein list. Good meme. Good meme.
Don't they
execution.
know the rule is under 3 was the rule in the Talmud. So I think this is against Judaism to go over 3 years old, isn't that? Or no, Goyim children are different, right?
You know, honestly, if you want my honest thoughts on that, that's talking about if a priest can marry a girl that was raped under 3, they think it's okay. It's not really giving permission for them to rape people under 3. Maybe some rabbi sometime took that and tried to twist it in his head and do some pill pull that it's okay if he rapes under 3 because it's like being poked in the eye. But that's like not the context of what was really happening there.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the context was, is she still considered a virgin where she can marry a priest if she was raped younger than 3? That's what it's actually about.
I think that's a good topic for if you ever come on my show. I'd love to we go over all the stuff that isn't true so that people know where we stand, because I constantly see stuff that is way overboard. Yeah. I don't want to be associated with it.
A lot of these Talmud memes, well, it comes from the Christian-controlled op that they have to focus on the Talmud and make the Talmud out to be this incredibly evil thing because they won't criticize the Torah. The Talmud is just commentary, interpretation, and more lore surrounding the Torah. And there's a lot of bad stuff in there, but memes online will have completely fake sources, or they'll ignore context, or they'll completely fabricate things. But I've got tons of stuff to expose in the Talmud, but that one is not one that I would start with. Now watch this. Bongino, so Cash Patel and Bongino, this was him on Tim Pool a bit ago. a real viral clip I had, although people are literally stealing my clip and cropping out my logo. But this is what he had to say on Tim Pool. Some country in the Middle East has all the blackmail tapes.
About a year and a half after that, I'm in a green room at Fox, and I'm not going to say who because they didn't give me permission to share it. But the short story, but I don't know who they are. Says, you know, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, you sure of that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure of that. That he's either a witting or unwitting asset, intelligence asset, meaning his plane and that island, the cameras, there's a big assumption out there. These videotapes were exclusively in the custody of Epstein. That's a huge mistake. The reason they wanted this story to go away is because there's an assumption like, oh yeah, Epstein had him. No, he wasn't the only one who had him, according to this source. These assets, that's why this blackmail story makes so much sense. Which Middle Eastern countries they are, I don't know. But this person, who's a very, very good reporter, I mean,
no idea which country it could be. Which country seems to control our government and our politicians the most? Who is Ghislaine Maxwell's father? Must be Qatar or Saudi Arabia, right? What a joke. And then this is who Trump appoints, Bongino. He gets in and says, now, yeah, he definitely killed himself. And there's nothing to see here. Listen to what he has to say.
That's right.
It's really quiet.
What cause is dear to your heart? That's right. That's right. What cause is dear to your heart?
Cause is dear to my Israel, the defense of Israel.
What is number one?
The cause dear to his heart. His answer is defending Israel. And he gets appointed, what is he, head of the FBI? What's his official position? DOJ, FBI, one of the ones he's involved with this Epstein investigation. And they put him in because his role is to defend Israel. Kash Patel, same thing. Listen to what he says. Israel is the priority.
We will shut off the machinery that feeds money into Iran. We will no longer have 100 hostages still in captivity, Israeli and American and otherwise, by Hamas and Iran's Hezbollah mercenary forces. We need America to wake up and prioritize Israel and bring home Israelis and make sure we stand by our number one ally in Israel. We
need to wake up and prioritize Israel. Last one, I think, here. Yeah, last one. Here's before and after Kash Patel, before getting appointed by Trump to, I forget, what is his role, guys, in the chat? Head of the FBI?
Defense of Israel.
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates...
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list? And why is it that the Senate, and good for Senator Blackburn to try to get it out, but then Dick Durbin comes over the top and says, no, we're not going to release the names. I don't care about the list itself, but if release the names, right?
And I've said it, Dan Bongino said it, we've reviewed all the information and the American public is going to get as much as we can release. He killed himself. Do you think, let's play out the logical conclusion of this. Do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities? Or do you think we would also participate in not prosecuting people we had evidence to prosecute people on? Where's the videotape of an Epstein Island of X, Y, and Z committing these frauds? Why haven't you given it to us? Do you really think I wouldn't give that to you if it existed?
Yeah, actually, I don't.
He's saying all the cliche things that liars say. Like the next thing he's going to say, are you calling me a liar?
Right.
Do you really think that I would do that? Just do that? Even if that did happen. Well, like he's saying the things they say to watch out for when someone's lying. He's like the whole list. And he's getting choked up. They always get choked up when they're being pressed on this.
Okay, we're going to turn the Power Chats back on. Hear what you guys have to say. Everybody follow Think For Yourself on YouTube and on Twitter. Check out some of his great videos, his interviews with Carrier. I'm liking the Carrier content. And, let's play these super chats and close it out here. Thanks everybody for the support. They'll be turning on in just a second. Apologize for the audio. We're getting rid of StreamYard. The audio will be better when I have guests now. And I'll have the soundboard hopefully too. Coming back. Can't do the soundboard. Or maybe I can now that I have it set up.
I like to picture Jesus in a tuxedo T-shirt because it says like, I want to be formal, but I'm here to party too. Because I like to party, so I like my...
Hemrathelian sent $5 on Rumble. I think a relevant angle would be the Freemasonic halls throughout North America. Gee, the square and compass clearly a hexagram. Building the Temple of Solomon, it's the Noahide version of B'nai B'rith.
Yep. Freemason version, the Temple of Solomon.
Saunders, we don't sent $5 regarding the nonsense Epstein FBI release. The outpouring of ridicule on the ZOH comments section today is unprecedented. Real righteous, likely bots. Just the censorship has been removed. To fully initiate the new pogrom?
You're saying Zero Hedge is censoring bots? What?
Saunders, we don't sent $5 regarding the nonsense Epstein FBI release. The outpouring of ridicule on the ZOH comments.
All right. That's a repeat. Is that it? Yep, that's it. Okay. He says likely bots or the censorship has been removed to fully initiate the new program. Don't trust Elon. We're not trusting Elon. Thank you, Zornder Edom. Thank you, everybody that donated. Give us a like, a share, a clip, a subscribe. Subscribe to Think for Yourself as well. Thanks for coming on. We'll have to do it again. I'll be happy to come on your show and talk exclusively mythicism or Judeo-conspiracies, whatever you want to do. Anytime.
Yep. I'd love to do that, man. I'm ready for it. Thank you so much for what you do, because I can't do what you do. I'm in a situation where I could dabble on here today, but you're providing us a service, and I thank you for it. And closing message is everything we're talking about relies on our contribution. The community we're talking about need everyone's support. And so we're in an information war. A lot of you guys know that, but I just want to, as someone who's been behind the curtain a little bit, that's one of the lessons I can give vaguely, is that all of it's very important that they win this information war. And you guys need to do that in a way that doesn't incriminate yourself, because we don't know what's next, but they're spending $45 billion getting ready for it. And I want to motivate people to spread the word on this message without getting yourself in unnecessary trouble. If you don't already have your face connected to this message, do it in a smart way. And guys, don't get in trouble. Just remember that they need our foreign aid. They need us to believe in the Torah, and it's reliant on us. They're riding all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good message. Stay out of trouble, too much trouble, and don't trust us. Think for yourself. Everybody, thanks for watching. Thank you to our guest. Let us know what you think in the comments, and I will see you guys again tomorrow with 7 C's, 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, I believe the time is, with 7 C's. We'll be getting into a whole lot of good stuff, so definitely check that out. All right, guys, have a nice day, and I will see you tomorrow.